Lena Hart's hands trembled as she pushed open the cafe door, her 2-year-old daughter balanced on her hip. She'd been here before, not physically, but emotionally. The setup, the hope, the inevitable moment when a man's eyes would shift from interested to distant the second he realized she came with baggage. But this time was different. This time, the lie she'd been living for 2 years wasn't just about being a single mom. It was about the truth she'd buried with her sister. A truth that could either save her or destroy the first real chance at love she'd had since the night she became a mother to a child who wasn't supposed to be hers. Thank you for joining this story. If you're still with me, please drop a comment below with your city so I can see how far this journey travels. Now, let's begin. The November rain had turned Asheville's streets into rivers of bronze and gold, the fallen leaves swirling in gutters like memories that refused to stay buried. Lena Hart stood outside the Honeypot Cafe, watching through the rain-streaked window as people inside laughed over lattes and pastries, their lives seemingly uncomplicated by the weight of secrets that could crush you if you let them. Poppy squirmed against her hip, tiny fingers tangling in Lena's dark hair. "Down, Mama, down." "Not yet, baby girl." Lena's voice came out softer than she intended, the kind of soft that betrayed every anxious thought racing through her mind. Just a few more minutes. She was stalling. She knew it. The rational part of her brain, the part that had somehow kept functioning through her sister's death, through the midnight feedings and diaper changes and the crushing loneliness of becoming a parent overnight, that part told her to walk away. Cancel the date. Text some excuse about Poppy being sick, or her car breaking down, or literally anything that would let her retreat back to the safe, small world she'd built for the two of them. But the other part of her, the part that still remembered what it felt like to be held, to be wanted, to fall asleep next to someone who knew your name and chose to stay anyway, that part made her pull the door open and step inside. The cafe smelled like cinnamon and coffee, warm and inviting in a way that made Lena's chest ache. She scanned the room, looking for the man from the dating app photos. Ethan Cole, 32, widower, single dad to a 5-year-old daughter. His profile had been refreshingly honest, not looking for perfect, just looking for real. She'd almost swiped left. Almost. Because real was exactly what she couldn't give him. "Lena?" She turned toward the voice and found him standing near a corner table, one hand raised in a tentative wave. He was taller than she'd expected, with dark hair that looked like he'd run his hands through it too many times, and eyes that were somehow both warm and guarded. He wore a blue flannel shirt over gray Henley, jeans that had seen better days, and work boots that suggested he actually used his hands for something other than typing. "Ethan." She managed a smile, shifting Poppy higher on her hip. "Hi." His eyes dropped to Poppy, and Lena braced herself. This was the moment. This was always the moment. She'd learned to read it in the microseconds, the slight widening of the eyes, the almost imperceptible step backward, the smile that didn't quite reach the eyes anymore. But Ethan's smile didn't falter. If anything, it softened. "And who's this?" he asked, his voice gentle. "This is Poppy." Lena's throat felt tight. "My daughter, I'm sorry, I should have mentioned her in my profile, but you did mention her." Ethan moved closer, not farther. "You said you had a 2-year-old. I have a 5-year-old. Hazel. She's with my mom today, or she'd be climbing the walls by now." He glanced at Poppy, who had stopped squirming and was now studying him with the intense, unblinking focus that only toddlers could manage. "Is it okay if I say hi to her?" Lena blinked. You want to say hi to her?" "Well, yeah." Ethan looked genuinely confused by the question. "I mean, she's with you, right? And we're here to get to know each other." He crouched down slightly, bringing himself to Poppy's eye level. "Hey there, Poppy. That's a really cool name. I'm Ethan." Poppy buried her face in Lena's shoulder, suddenly shy. "She's usually more talkative," Lena said quickly. "She's probably just tired or hungry or both. Toddlers are basically like tiny drunk adults, so who knows what's going through her head right now." She was babbling. God, she was babbling. She forced herself to stop talking. Ethan stood up, his smile never wavering. "No worries. Hazel's the same way with new people. Takes her a minute to warm up." He gestured toward the table. "Should we sit?" I already ordered myself a coffee, but I can grab you whatever you want. Coffee would be great. Black, 2 sugars. Lena moved toward the table, her heart hammering. This was going too well. Men didn't react this way. They didn't smile and ask permission and treat her child like she was a person instead of an inconvenience. Something had to be wrong with him. She settled into the chair, positioning Poppy on her lap. Ethan headed to the counter, and Lena watched him go, trying to catalog all the potential red flags she might have missed. Maybe he was one of those guys who seemed perfect at first, but turned out to be controlling. Or maybe he had a secret wife somewhere. Or maybe... Here you go. Ethan set the coffee in front of her, then placed a small plate with a banana muffin between them. I wasn't sure if Poppy liked muffins, but Hazel goes through about 12 of these a week, so I figured it was worth a shot. Lena stared at the muffin. You bought food for my daughter? Too much? Ethan sat down across from her, looking uncertain for the first time. Sorry, I should have asked first. Hazel has a nut allergy, so I'm always in the habit of checking ingredients, but I probably should have... No. Lena's voice came out sharper than she intended. She softened it. No, it's really thoughtful. Thank you. Poppy had already spotted the muffin and was reaching for it with both hands. Muff, muff. What do we say? Lena prompted. Peas. Ethan laughed, and the sound was warm and genuine. Well, with manners like that, how can I say no? He broke off a piece of the muffin and held it out, waiting for Lena's nod before offering it to Poppy. She watched her daughter take the muffin piece with both hands, cramming it into her mouth with the kind of enthusiasm that suggested she hadn't eaten in days instead of the 2 hours it had actually been since lunch. A crumb stuck to her cheek, and Lena reached out to brush it away, her heart doing something complicated in her chest. This man had just fed her child. Without hesitation, without judgment, like it was the most natural thing in the world. So, Ethan said, wrapping his hands around his coffee mug. Tell me about yourself, the real stuff, not the dating profile version. Lena took a sip of her coffee, buying herself time. The real stuff. God, if he only knew. What do you want to know? Whatever you want to tell me. Ethan leaned back in his chair, and Lena noticed the way his shoulders relaxed, like he was genuinely comfortable sitting across from a woman with a toddler destroying a muffin. Your profile said you're a nurse? Pediatric nurse. I work at Mission Hospital. Lena kept her voice steady, steering the conversation towards safe territory. Mostly night shifts, which is hell on my sleep schedule, but better for childcare logistics. I bet. Ethan's expression shifted to something that looked like understanding. My mom helps with Hazel when I can't shuffle my schedule around. I'm a carpenter, custom furniture mostly, cabinets, built-ins, that kind of thing. You make things with your hands. Lena hadn't meant to say it out loud, but there was something about the way he'd said it. No false modesty, no apologizing for not having a desk job. Yeah. Ethan's mouth quirked up at one corner. It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills. And I like knowing that something I built is going to be in someone's home for the next 50 years. He paused. Your profile said you moved to Asheville 2 years ago? And there it was. The question she'd been dreading since she sat down. Lena looked down at Poppy, who had finished the muffin and was now trying to grab Lena's coffee mug. She redirected her daughter's hands away from the hot liquid, her mind racing through the carefully constructed story she'd told so many times it almost felt true. Yeah. I'm originally from Georgia, small town outside Augusta. Moved here for a fresh start. She met Ethan's eyes, trying to read whether he wanted her to elaborate. After Poppy was born. It wasn't a lie, not technically. She had moved here after Poppy was born. She just left out the part about why. Fresh starts are good, Ethan said quietly. I get that. Something in his voice made Lena look up. His eyes had gone distant, the kind of distant that spoke of memories he'd rather not revisit. Your profile said you're a widower, she said carefully. You don't have to talk about it if... Cancer. The word came out flat, practiced. Emily, my wife. 3 years ago. Hazel was 2. He stared into his coffee. Brain tumor. 6 months from diagnosis to the end. Lena's chest constricted. I'm so sorry. It was hell. Ethan looked up at her, and the rawness in his expression nearly undid her. But that's not... I didn't agree to this date to make you sit through my tragic backstory. I just wanted you to know that I get it. The single parent thing. The way people look at you like you're either a saint or a disaster waiting to happen. The exhaustion that goes all the way down to your bones. Yeah. Lena's voice came out as barely more than a whisper. I get that too. Poppy chose that moment to let out a shriek of delight, having discovered that she could make her hands stick to the table if she pressed them down hard enough. The sound shattered the heavy moment, and both Lena and Ethan laughed. Sorry, Lena said, trying to peel Poppy's hands off the table. She's at that age where everything is either the most exciting thing in the world or the end of civilization. Don't apologize. Ethan reached across the table, offering Poppy his finger. She grabbed it immediately, examining it like it was a fascinating new toy. Hazel was the same way at 2. Actually, she's still the same way at 5, just with better vocabulary to express her opinions. Oh God, I'm not ready for opinions with vocabulary. Nobody is. Ethan gently extracted his finger from Poppy's grip. But you figure it out. You always figure it out. They talked for another hour, their conversation flowing in the easy way of two people who'd both learned to grab joy in small moments because the big ones had hurt too much. Ethan told her about Hazel's obsession with dinosaurs and her conviction that she was going to be a paleontologist princess when she grew up. Lena found herself sharing stories about Poppy's fearlessness on the playground and the way she sang herself to sleep every night with made-up songs that made no sense. She didn't tell him that those songs sounded like her sister's voice. That sometimes, when Poppy laughed, Lena heard her sister's laugh, bright and wild and gone too soon. That every milestone, every new word, every tiny triumph was laced with grief for the woman who should have been here to see it. Some truths were too heavy for a first date. Down. Poppy had reached her limit of sitting still, squirming in Lena's lap with increasing urgency. Down, Mama. Okay, okay. Lena stood, settling Poppy on her feet but keeping a firm grip on her hand. I should probably get her home before she stages a full revolt. Ethan rose with her. Can I walk you to your car? Sure. Lena grabbed her purse, hyper-aware of how natural this felt. The easy rhythm of gathering their things. Ethan holding the door for them, the rain having stopped to leave the streets gleaming. Her car was parked half a block away, and Poppy toddled between them, one hand in Lena's, the other reaching up toward Ethan until he took it without being asked. The sight of them, this man and her daughter, hands linked like it was the simplest thing in the world, made something crack open in Lena's chest. Thank you, she said when they reached her car, for not running away when you saw I had a kid. Ethan looked genuinely surprised. Why would I run away? You'd be surprised how many guys do. Then they're idiots. Ethan's voice was firm. You're a single mom. I'm a single dad. We both know what we're walking into. He paused. If this is something you want to walk into, no pressure. Lena looked down at Poppy, who had discovered a puddle and was trying to stomp in it. I want to, she said softly. I'm not good at this. The dating thing, the letting people in thing. Me neither. Ethan's smile was crooked. But maybe we can be bad at it together. And despite everything, the secrets, the guilt, the voice in her head that kept screaming this was a terrible idea, Lena found herself smiling back. Yeah, I'd like that. They exchanged numbers, made tentative plans for a second date. Ethan helped buckle Poppy into her car seat, handling the straps with the confidence of someone who'd done this 1,000 times before. When he stepped back and closed the door, his hand lingered on the frame for just a moment. Drive safe, he said. You too. Lena waited until he'd walked away before she let out the breath she'd been holding. She glanced in the rearview mirror at Poppy, who was already fighting sleep, her eyes drooping as she clutched her favorite stuffed elephant. What do you think, baby girl? Lena asked, starting the engine. Did we just meet someone good? Poppy didn't answer, already drifting off. But Lena thought about the way Ethan had crouched down to Poppy's level. The way he'd bought her a muffin without being asked. The way he'd looked at them both, not like they were broken, but like they were whole. Maybe, just maybe, this could work. If she could keep the truth buried just a little bit longer. The second date happened 3 days later at a park, with both girls in tow this time. Lena had almost canceled twice, once because Poppy woke up cranky, and once because her own anxiety had reached the point where breathing felt like a conscious effort. But she'd shown up anyway, telling herself it was just one afternoon. What could possibly go wrong in one afternoon? Hazel was a whirlwind of energy and opinions, exactly as Ethan had described. She had her father's dark hair but her mother's eyes, or so Lena assumed, since Ethan's eyes were brown and Hazel's were a striking green. She wore a dinosaur t-shirt and light-up sneakers, and within 5 minutes of meeting Poppy, had declared them best friends forever. "You have to push me on the swings," Hazel informed Lena with the kind of authority that suggested she was used to being obeyed. "Daddy pushes too high, and it makes my tummy feel funny." "I do not push too high," Ethan protested. "You told me to push higher." "That was yesterday. Today I want medium pushes." Hazel grabbed Lena's hand. "Come on. Poppy can swing too, but she needs the baby swings because she's still little." Lena found herself being dragged toward the playground, Ethan trailing behind with Poppy in his arms. "Is she always like this?" she called over her shoulder. "This is her being subtle," Ethan called back. They spent the afternoon in the kind of comfortable chaos that came with young children, wiping noses, preventing playground disasters, negotiating snack sharing like they were brokering international peace treaties. At one point, Lena looked over to see Ethan sitting on a bench with both girls, reading them a story from a book Hazel had insisted on bringing. Poppy was curled against his side like she'd been doing it her whole life, and something in Lena's chest twisted so hard she had to look away. This was dangerous. This feeling. This hope. "You okay?" Ethan's voice startled her. She turned to find him standing beside her, having somehow managed to get both girls interested in digging in the sandbox. "Yeah, just taking it in. It's a lot, right?" Ethan leaned against the fence beside her. "The whole blended situation. I keep waiting for it to feel weird, but it doesn't." "It should feel weird," Lena said. "We barely know each other." "Maybe." Ethan was quiet for a moment. "Or maybe when you've already lived through the worst thing you can imagine, you stop waiting for perfect timing. You just take the good stuff when it shows up." Lena looked at him, really looked at him, at the shadows under his eyes that spoke of too many sleepless nights, at the way he watched Hazel like he was afraid she might disappear if he looked away for too long, at the careful way he held himself, like someone who'd learned that the world could break you without warning. She understood that feeling. God, did she understand it. "Ethan," she started, not sure what she was going to say, but knowing she needed to say something. I'm not perfect. I have a lot of baggage." "Everyone has baggage." Ethan's voice was gentle. "The question is whether you want to help each other carry it." Before Lena could respond, a shriek erupted from the sandbox. They both turned to see Poppy standing with sand in her hair, her face scrunched up in pre-cry rage, while Hazel looked on with the horrified expression of a child who knows they've made a terrible mistake. "She wanted to be a sand princess," Hazel wailed as they rushed over. "I was just trying to make her a crown." It took 20 minutes to calm Poppy down, clean the sand out of her hair, and convince Hazel that she wasn't in trouble. By the time they'd restored peace, both girls were exhausted and cranky, and Lena's shirt had suspicious wet spots that could have been tears, snot, or both. "I should get her home," Lena said, hoisting a now whimpering Poppy onto her hip. "Nap time is about 2 hours overdue." "Same here." Ethan had Hazel's hand in his, the little girl dragging her feet with the particular boneless quality of a tired 5-year-old. "But this was good, right? Despite the sand incident?" "Despite the sand incident," Lena agreed. They walked to the parking lot together, the girls quiet now in that post-meltdown exhaustion. Ethan helped get Poppy into her car seat again, his movements careful and sure. When he stepped back, he looked at Lena with an expression she couldn't quite read. "I know we're taking this slow," he said, "and I'm not trying to rush anything, but I really like spending time with you, with both of you." He glanced toward his own car where his mother was waiting with Hazel. "I think Hazel really likes you too, and Poppy." "Poppy definitely likes Hazel," Lena managed to smile. "I'm pretty sure she'd move into your house tomorrow if we let her." "The offer's open." Ethan said it like a joke, but there was something underneath it, something real and tentative and terrifying. Lena felt her smile falter. Ethan, too much? He rubbed the back of his neck. Sorry, I'm not good at the timing thing. No, it's not that. Lena took a breath. I just don't want you to think this is more than it is. We're still figuring each other out. I know. Ethan's voice was soft. But I'm figuring out that I like you. A lot. And I wanted you to know that. He didn't wait for her to respond, just gave her a small smile, squeezed her hand once, and walked away. Lena sat in her car for a long moment after he'd driven off, her hands gripping the steering wheel. In the back seat, Poppy had already fallen asleep, her head tilted at an angle that would probably give her a crick in her neck later. What am I doing? Lena whispered to the empty car. But she already knew the answer. She was falling hard and fast for a man who deserved the truth. A man who'd looked at her daughter and seen a person worth knowing, worth loving. A man who had no idea that the child he was starting to care about wasn't who he thought she was. Lena pulled out her phone, staring at the photos in her gallery. Most of them were of Poppy, chubby-cheeked and laughing, covered in spaghetti sauce, sleeping with her bottom in the air. But if you scrolled back far enough, you'd find the ones from 2 years ago. The hospital. Her sister, pale and exhausted, holding a newborn with the fierce love of someone who knew their time was running out. Promise me, her sister had whispered. Promise me you'll love her like she's yours. And Lena had. God, she had. But she'd never promised to lie. That part had come later, in the dark weeks after the funeral when people kept asking questions she couldn't bear to answer. When the pity in their eyes became too much to carry. When she'd realized that telling the truth meant Poppy would forever be the orphan instead of just my daughter. So she'd lied. She'd moved across state lines and started over and buried the truth so deep she'd almost convinced herself it didn't matter. But it did matter. Because Ethan deserved to know. Because Poppy deserved to grow up knowing where she came from. Because lies always came out, eventually, and the longer she waited, the worse it would be. She should tell him. She should tell him right now, before this went any further. Instead, she started the car and drove home, the secret sitting heavy in her chest like a stone. Tomorrow, she told herself, she'd tell him tomorrow. But tomorrow turned into next week, and next week turned into a month. And before she knew it, they'd fallen into a rhythm that felt dangerously like a real relationship. Dinner dates while the girls played. Trips to the Children's Museum. A Halloween where Hazel dressed as a T-Rex and Poppy was a tiny pumpkin, and Ethan's mother took so many pictures that Lena's phone storage gave up entirely. They didn't sleep together, not yet, though the tension was there, simmering under every lingering touch and interrupted kiss. They were taking it slow, both of them too scared of breaking something precious to rush. But slow didn't mean Lena's feelings weren't racing ahead at breakneck speed. She'd catch herself thinking about him at work, during the quiet hours of her night shift when the hospital settled into its nocturnal rhythm. She'd imagine what it would be like to wake up next to him, to share a home instead of scheduling complicated logistics, to be a family, a real family, not just two single parents who happen to like each other, and then the guilt would crash over her because she was building a fantasy on a foundation of lies. It came to a head on a Tuesday in late October. They'd planned a quiet evening at Ethan's place. Pizza, a movie the girls would inevitably ignore, the kind of low-key domesticity Lena had started to crave. But when she arrived, Ethan opened the door looking wrecked. "What's wrong?" Lena asked immediately, Poppy balanced on her hip. "Nothing. Everything. I don't know." Ethan stepped aside to let her in. "Hazel's with my mom tonight. I should have texted you, but—" "Ethan." Lena set Poppy down, letting her toddle toward the toy box Ethan kept in his living room specifically for their visits. "Talk to me." He ran both hands through his hair, a gesture she'd learned meant he was struggling to find words. "Today's Emily's birthday. Was Emily's birthday. I thought I was okay, but then Hazel made this card at school, and it was for her mom, and—" His voice cracked. "I'm sorry. This isn't fair to you." "Stop." Lena crossed the room and took his hands in hers. "You're allowed to grieve. You're allowed to have hard days. You don't have to apologize for missing her. But I'm here with you, and I'm thinking about her, and that's okay." Lena squeezed his hands. "Ethan, she was your wife. She's Hazel's mother. She's always going to be part of your life. I'm not asking you to forget her." Something in Ethan's expression broke. He pulled Lena into a hug, holding her like she was the only thing keeping him upright. She wrapped her arms around him, feeling the shudder of his breathing against her shoulder. "I didn't think I'd ever feel this again," he whispered into her hair. "This kind of connection, this kind of... God, I'm terrified, Lena. I'm terrified of losing someone again." Lena's throat tightened. She knew she should pull back, should put distance between them before this went any further. But instead, she held him tighter. "I'm scared too," she admitted. "I'm so scared of screwing this up." They stood like that for a long moment, two people held together by fear and hope, and the kind of tenderness that only came from surviving the unsurvivable. From the living room, they could hear Poppy singing to herself, her voice high and sweet and completely unconcerned with the weight of the moment. Ethan pulled back just enough to look at Lena, his hands framing her face. "I'm falling in love with you," he said, the words raw and honest. "I know it's too soon, and I know we're supposed to take this slow, but I can't keep pretending I don't feel it." Lena's heart stopped, then started again, beating so hard she was sure he could feel it. This was it. This was the moment. She had to tell him. "Ethan!" Her voice came out strangled. "You don't have to say it back," he said quickly. "I just needed you to know. I needed to be honest." Honest. The word hit her like a physical blow. "There's something I need to tell you," she heard herself say. "About Poppy. About me. About..." A crash from the living room cut her off. They both spun to see Poppy standing amid a pile of blocks, looking delighted with the destruction she'd caused. "Uh-oh," she announced cheerfully. Ethan laughed, the sound watery but genuine. "I'll get it. You want some wine? I think we could both use a drink." "Yeah," Lena's voice sounded distant to her own ears. "Wine would be good." She watched him head toward the kitchen, then turned to help Poppy rebuild her tower. Her hands were shaking. She'd almost told him, almost. But the moment had passed, swallowed by the ordinary chaos of parenting and the careful dance of two people learning to be together. Later, she told herself. She'd tell him later, when the timing was better, when she could find the right words, when she was braver. But as she sat on Ethan's couch that night, watching Poppy play while he made them dinner, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was standing on the edge of something that would either save her or shatter her completely. And she still didn't know which way she'd fall. The wine sat forgotten on the coffee table, condensation pooling around the base of Lena's glass. She'd taken exactly 2 sips before her stomach had twisted into knots too tight to ignore. Across the room, Ethan was helping Poppy stack blocks into an increasingly unstable tower. His earlier grief softened into something gentler, more present. Every time the tower wobbled, Poppy would squeal with delight, and Ethan would steady it with careful hands. Lena watched them, her heart doing something painful behind her ribs. This was what she wanted. This ease, this warmth, this man who looked at her daughter like she hung the moon. But wanting it didn't make her worthy of it. Not when every moment together was built on a foundation she'd poured herself, mixing truth and lies until she couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. "You're quiet." Ethan glanced over his shoulder, his expression concerned. "You okay?" "Yeah." The lie came automatically, smooth as glass. "Just tired. Long shift last night." It wasn't entirely false. She had worked a 12-hour shift, had held the hand of a 7-year-old with leukemia while they placed his IV, had wiped tears from a mother's face while her premature twins fought for every breath. But that wasn't why she was quiet. She was quiet because the words she needed to say kept climbing up her throat and dying there, suffocated by fear. Ethan stood, brushing off his jeans. "I should get you home then. Early bedtime for everyone." "No." Lena said it too quickly, too sharply. She softened her voice. "I mean, we just got here and you made dinner. I'm not that tired." She was, though, exhausted down to her bones, but not from work, from carrying this secret like stones in her pockets, growing heavier every day. They ate pizza on the couch while Poppy alternated between playing and demanding bites from Lena's plate, despite having her own. The domesticity of it should have been comforting, but Lena felt like she was watching herself from somewhere outside her body, seeing the life she was building and knowing it would all come crashing down the moment she opened her mouth. Can I ask you something? Ethan's voice pulled her back. He'd finished eating and was watching her with those dark, careful eyes. Sure. What made you want to be a pediatric nurse? Lena looked down at Poppy, who had abandoned food entirely in favor of trying to fit her entire fist in her mouth. I like kids, she said slowly. They're honest in a way adults aren't. When they hurt, they tell you. When they're scared, they show you. There's no pretense. But it must be hard, seeing sick kids every day. It is. Lena's throat felt tight. But sometimes you get to be there for the good moments too. The kid who finally gets to go home. The teenager who beats the odds. Those moments make the hard ones bearable. She didn't tell him about the ones that didn't make it. The empty beds and grieving parents, and the way she'd go home and hold Poppy too tight, terrified that the universe might decide to take her too. Some truths were too dark to share over pizza on a Tuesday night. Ethan was quiet for a moment. Then, carefully, is Poppy's father in the picture at all? Lena's blood went cold. No. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have... It's fine. She forced herself to meet his eyes. He's not around, never was. Another lie. Another brick in the wall between them. Because the truth was that Poppy's father had died in a car accident when her sister was 4 months pregnant, and Lena had never even met him. Had only seen his face in the photos her sister kept by her bedside, this young man with kind eyes who'd never gotten to hold his daughter. That must be hard, Ethan said softly, doing it all on your own. I manage. Lena's voice came out harder than she intended. We manage. She could feel him watching her, could sense the questions building behind his careful expression. But he didn't push, just nodded and reached for his wine, and Lena wanted to scream at him to push, to demand answers, to make her tell the truth because she clearly couldn't do it on her own. Instead, she stood abruptly. I should get her home. It's past her bedtime. Ethan didn't argue, just helped gather Poppy's scattered toys while Lena got her daughter's shoes on. The drive home was quiet, Poppy dozing in her car seat while Lena's thoughts raced in circles. She should have told him. She'd had the perfect opening, and she'd blown it again. The next few weeks passed in a blur of stolen moments and careful avoidance. They saw each other when their schedules aligned, always with the girls present, always keeping things light and easy. But underneath it all, Lena could feel the pressure building. Ethan's feelings were deepening. She could see it in the way he looked at her, the way his hand would linger on her back, the way he'd started talking about holidays and making plans that stretched months into the future. And she was falling too, falling so hard it terrified her. She'd catch herself daydreaming during her shifts about what it would be like to wake up in his house, to drink coffee while he made breakfast, to build a life that wasn't just surviving, but actually living. She thought about Hazel and Poppy growing up together, about family dinners and shared holidays and all the ordinary magic she'd thought she'd lost when her sister died. But every time she got close to confessing, something would stop her. Poppy would need something, or Hazel would interrupt, or Ethan would say something that made her heart crack open a little wider, and she'd convince herself that she could wait just one more day. One more day turned into 2 weeks. November arrived with the kind of cold that cuts straight through your coat, and Asheville transformed into a postcard of autumn perfection. The mountains blazed with color, and every cafe in town started serving pumpkin everything. Ethan had started a new project, custom cabinets for a kitchen renovation, and the work was consuming most of his daylight hours. They'd had to cancel 2 dates because he was behind schedule, and Lena told herself she was relieved. Space was good. Space gave her time to think, but thinking just made everything worse. You're distracted. Lena's coworker, Marissa, cornered her in the break room during a rare quiet moment on the pediatric floor. What's going on? Nothing. Lena poured herself coffee that had been sitting on the burner too long, the smell bitter and burnt. You've checked your phone 6 times in the last 10 minutes. That's not nothing. Marissa leaned against the counter, her scrubs wrinkled from a long shift. Is it the guy? The carpenter you've been seeing? Lena had made the mistake of mentioning Ethan once, in passing, and Marissa had latched onto it like a dog with a bone. It's complicated. It's always complicated. Marissa grabbed a protein bar from her locker. But you like him, right? Yeah. Lena's voice came out softer than she intended. I really like him. Then what's the problem? The problem was everything. The problem was that she'd built her entire life on a lie, and now she was in too deep to see a way out that didn't end in disaster. But she couldn't say that to Marissa, who barely knew her, who'd never understand the specific kind of grief that came from losing your only family and inheriting a child in the same breath. I'm just scared, Lena said finally, of screwing it up. Marissa studied her for a long moment. You know what I think? I think you're scared of being happy, because being happy means you have something to lose. And she unwrapped her protein bar. But here's the thing. You already have something to lose. You're already in it. The only question is whether you're brave enough to go all in. Before Lena could respond, her phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. Finished early. Can I see you tonight? I miss you. Lena stared at the message, her heart doing something complicated. She typed back, My place, 7 p.m., Poppy will be asleep. His response came immediately. Perfect. I'll bring wine. Go all in, Marissa said, watching Lena's face. What's the worst that could happen? Everything, Lena thought. The worst that could happen was everything. Ethan showed up at 7:15 with a bottle of red wine and an apology about traffic. Lena had spent the past hour cleaning her apartment with the kind of nervous energy that came from knowing something important was about to happen, even if she couldn't name exactly what. Poppy had gone down easy for once, exhausted from a day at daycare, and the apartment was quiet in the way it only got after bedtime. Hey! Ethan stepped inside, and Lena was struck again by how right he looked in her space, like he belonged there. You look beautiful. Lena glanced down at her jeans and old sweater, acutely aware she was wearing the opposite of beautiful. I look like I've been cleaning. Still beautiful. He kissed her softly, his hand cupping her cheek. It was the kind of kiss that promised more, and Lena felt heat spread through her chest. They settled on the couch with wine, their bodies angled toward each other in the way of people who were still learning each other's edges. Ethan had paint on his jeans. He always had paint or sawdust or some evidence of his work on him, and Lena found herself wanting to trace the stains with her fingers. How's the cabinet project? She asked instead. Done, thank God. Ethan took a sip of wine. The client was thrilled. Wants me to do her whole house now. He paused. Which means I'll probably be booked solid through the holidays, but the money's good, so I can't complain. That's great. Lena meant it, but her voice came out flat. Ethan set his wine down. Okay, what's wrong? And don't say nothing because I can tell something's bothering you. I'm fine. Lena. He shifted closer, his knee brushing hers. Talk to me, please. She should have told him then, should have taken a breath and said the words that had been burning a hole in her chest for weeks. But instead she kissed him, hard and desperate, and with all the feelings she couldn't put into words. Ethan made a surprised sound against her mouth, then kissed her back with equal intensity. It escalated quickly. His hands in her hair, her fingers gripping his shirt, both of them falling back against the couch cushions. Lena's mind went mercifully blank, consumed by the feel of him, the weight of him, the way he kissed like he was trying to memorize her. Wait. Ethan pulled back, breathing hard. Wait, I don't want to rush this. I'm not rushing. Lena tried to pull him back down, but he resisted. Yes, you are. His voice was gentle but firm. And I need to know why. Lena felt tears sting her eyes. Why does there have to be a reason? Maybe I just want you. I want you too. Ethan's thumb brushed her cheekbone. God, Lena, I want you so much it keeps me up at night, but this feels like you're trying to avoid something. I'm not. You've been pulling away for weeks. His eyes were too knowing, too careful. Every time I try to get close, you find a reason to put distance between us. And I need to know if that's about me or if it's about something else. Lena sat up, putting space between them. Her heart was pounding so hard she felt dizzy. It's not you. Then what is it? Tell him. Tell him now. The voice in her head was screaming, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she heard herself say, I'm just not good at this. At letting people in. At trusting that things can work out. It wasn't a lie, exactly, but it wasn't the truth either. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached for her hand, threading his fingers through hers. I lost Emily 3 years ago, he said quietly, and for a long time after she died, I thought that was it. That I'd had my chance at love, and it was over. That trying again would somehow be a betrayal of what we had. Lena's throat tightened. Ethan, let me finish. His grip on her hand tightened. I was terrified when I started dating again, terrified of getting hurt, of Hazel getting hurt, of dishonoring Emily's memory. But then I met you and his voice cracked, and I realized that loving someone new doesn't erase what I had before. It just means my heart's big enough for both. A tear slipped down Lena's cheek. You make it sound so simple. It's not simple. It's terrifying. Ethan used his free hand to wipe away her tear, but I'm willing to be terrified if it means having this, having you, having us. The word us hit Lena like a physical blow. Us. Like they were a unit, like they belonged to each other, like the lie she'd been living hadn't already poisoned everything they were building. I need to tell you something. The words came out before she could stop them. Ethan's expression shifted, something like fear flickering across his face. Okay. About Poppy. Lena's hands were shaking. She pulled away from him, needing space to say this. About how I became her mother. Lena, you don't have to. Yes, I do. She stood up, needing to move, needing to put distance between them before she lost her nerve entirely. You said you want honesty. You said you want to know me. Well, this is part of who I am. Ethan stood too, his hands in his pockets like he didn't know what else to do with them. I'm listening. Lena walked to the window, looking out at the street below. A couple was walking past, holding hands, laughing at something one of them had said. They looked so easy together, so uncomplicated. She wanted that. God, she wanted that so badly. I told you I moved here for a fresh start, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. That's true, but I didn't tell you why I needed one. She could hear Ethan behind her, could feel his presence like a physical weight. Okay. Poppy's not... Her voice broke. She took a breath, tried again. Poppy isn't biologically mine. The silence that followed was deafening. Lena couldn't bring herself to turn around, couldn't bear to see the look on Ethan's face. I don't understand, he said finally. She's my sister's daughter. The words came faster now, like a dam breaking. My sister, Claire. She got pregnant, and her boyfriend, Poppy's father, died in a car accident before she even knew she was carrying his baby. She was going to raise Poppy alone, and she was so excited, so ready. But then, Lena's voice failed her. She pressed her palm against the window, the glass cold against her skin. She had complications, Lena continued, forcing the words out. During delivery, they couldn't stop the bleeding. She held Poppy for maybe 20 minutes before she couldn't say it, couldn't say the word died out loud, even though it had been 2 years, even though she'd lived with this loss every single day since. Ethan's hands settled on her shoulders, gentle and grounding. Lena. She made me promise. Lena turned to face him, tears streaming down her face now. She made me promise I'd take care of her baby, that I'd love her. And I do, Ethan. I love her so much it terrifies me, but I'm not her mother. Not really. I'm just... Stop. Ethan's voice was firm. His voice. Stop right there. Lena looked up at him, expecting to see judgment or pity, or worse, but his eyes were just sad. Infinitely sad and infinitely kind. You are her mother, he said quietly. Biology doesn't make someone a parent. Love does. Showing up every day does. You've been raising her for 2 years, Lena. You've been everything she needs. That makes you her mother. But I lied to you, Sick. Lena's voice came out broken. I let you think. I didn't tell you. You didn't lie. Ethan's hands moved to cup her face, his thumbs brushing away her tears. You told me you had a daughter. You do. The rest is just details. They're not details. Lena pulled away from him, needing him to understand. I moved here so people wouldn't know, so Poppy wouldn't grow up being the orphan. so I wouldn't have to see pity in everyone's eyes every time I introduced her. I built an entire life on people assuming she was mine, and I never corrected them. Did you ever actively claim to have given birth to her? Lena thought back through the past 2 years. No, I just let people assume. Then you didn't lie. Ethan's voice was steady. You protected your daughter. You protected yourself. There's no shame in that. But you, Lena gestured helplessly between them. You deserve to know the truth. About everything. Okay. Ethan sat back down on the couch, his expression open. Tell me everything. I'm listening. So she did. She told him about Claire, about the pregnancy that was supposed to be joyful, about the boyfriend who died too young. She told him about the phone call that had shattered her world, about racing to the hospital and arriving too late to say goodbye. She told him about holding her newborn niece while her sister's body was being prepared for the morgue, about the impossible choice that hadn't really been a choice at all. She told him about the funeral, about well-meaning relatives who'd suggested adoption, who'd said Lena was too young, too single, too unprepared to raise a child, about the moment she'd looked down at Poppy and known, with absolute certainty, that she would burn the world down before she let anyone take this baby away. And she told him about the move to Asheville, about the conscious decision to start over where no one knew her story, about the relief of being able to say my daughter without having to explain the tragedy behind those words. I thought it would be easier, she said, her voice hoarse from talking. Not having to see pity in everyone's eyes, not having Poppy grow up defined by loss. But then I met you, and suddenly the lie felt bigger, more complicated. Ethan had listened to everything without interrupting, his expression unreadable. Now he leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Can I ask you something? Lena nodded, bracing herself. Do you regret it? Taking her? No. The answer came without hesitation. Never. She's the best thing in my life. And do you love her? Really love her, not just out of obligation. With everything I have. Lena's voice broke on the words. She's mine, Ethan. Maybe not by blood, but in every way that matters, she's mine. Then that's all that matters. Ethan stood and crossed to her, pulling her into his arms. The rest is just noise. Lena sagged against him, relief and disbelief warring in her chest. You're not angry? Why would I be angry? Ethan's arms tightened around her. You went through something impossibly hard, and you made the choice to love a child who needed you. That's not something to be angry about. That's something to admire. But I didn't tell you, because it wasn't my business until you were ready to share it. Ethan pulled back just enough to look at her. Lena, I've been widowed for 3 years. I know about carrying grief. I know about making impossible choices. And I know that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose to keep living even when part of you died with the person you lost. His words hit something deep in Lena's chest, something she hadn't realized she'd been holding on to. You really mean that? I really mean that. Ethan kissed her forehead, gentle and sure. You're an incredible mother, to a little girl who's lucky to have you, and I'm... His voice caught. I'm falling in love with both of you, the whole package. Biology doesn't change that. Lena buried her face in his chest, tears soaking into his shirt. She'd expected judgment, rejection, the same pity she'd spent 2 years avoiding. But Ethan just held her, one hand stroking her hair, letting her cry until the storm passed. When she finally pulled back, her eyes were swollen and her face was blotchy, but she felt lighter than she had in months. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For not making me feel broken. Ethan's smile was sad but genuine. You're not broken, Lena. You're just human. And humans carry scars. That's okay. They spent the rest of the evening on the couch, Lena's head on Ethan's shoulder, talking about everything and nothing. He asked about Claire, what she'd been like, and Lena found herself sharing stories she hadn't told anyone in years. The time Claire had dyed her hair purple on a dare, the way she'd sung off-key to every song on the radio, the fierce, protective love she'd had for everyone she cared about. She sounds amazing, Ethan said softly. She was. Lena's voice was steady now, the grief present, but not overwhelming. Poppy has her laugh. Sometimes I hear it and I... She stopped, throat tight. I get it. Ethan's hand found hers. Hazel has Emily's expression sometimes, the way she tilts her head when she's thinking. It hurts and it helps at the same time. Yeah, Lena squeezed his hand. Exactly like that. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. The kind of silence that only existed between people who'd shared their wounds and found acceptance instead of judgment. Outside, the night had deepened, the street quiet except for the occasional car passing. Can I ask you something else? Ethan's voice was careful. Anything. Does Poppy know? About Claire? Lena had been expecting this question, had thought about it countless times over the past 2 years. Not yet. She's too young to understand, but I'm going to tell her. When she's old enough. I want her to know about her birth mother, about how much Claire loved her. She paused. I just want her to know she's loved first, before she knows about the loss. That makes sense. Ethan was quiet for a moment. For what it's worth, I think you're handling this exactly right. You do? Yeah. He shifted so he could look at her properly. You're giving her stability, a home, love, everything a kid needs. The truth can wait until she's ready to carry it. Lena felt something a knot in her chest, a tension she hadn't even realized she was carrying. I worry sometimes that I'm doing it all wrong, that I should have told people from the start that lying, even by omission, was the wrong choice. There's no right choice in situations like this, Ethan said. You did what you thought was best for Poppy. That's all any parent can do. He smiled, a little crooked. Trust me, I second-guess myself constantly with Hazel. Am I too overprotective? Not protective enough? Am I talking about Emily too much? Not enough? There's no manual for this stuff. No, there really isn't. Lena leaned into him, exhausted but grateful. Thank you. For listening. For understanding. For not running away screaming. Where would I run to? Ethan's tone was light, but there was weight behind it. I'm exactly where I want to be. The word settled over Lena like a blanket, warm and reassuring. For the first time in weeks, she felt like she could breathe properly. The secret that had been suffocating her was out in the open, and the world hadn't ended. Ethan was still here, still holding her, still choosing her. I should probably go, he said eventually, though he made no move to stand. It's getting late. Stay. The word was out before Lena could think better of it. I mean, not like, I don't want you to leave yet. Ethan's smile was soft. I don't want to leave either. They ended up falling asleep on the couch, tangled together in a way that would probably leave them both with sore necks in the morning. But Lena didn't care. She felt safer than she had in years, wrapped in Ethan's arms, the truth finally spoken and somehow, miraculously, accepted. When she woke just before dawn, Ethan was already awake, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite name. Hey, she whispered. Hey. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. I've been thinking. About? About us. About what you told me last night. His hand settled on her cheek. And I want you to know that it doesn't change anything. If anything, it makes me... He stopped, searching for words. It makes me love you more. Lena's breath caught. Ethan, I know it's fast. I know we're supposed to be taking things slow, but I can't keep pretending I don't feel it. His thumb traced her cheekbone. I love you, Lena. I love your strength and your heart and the way you fight for Poppy. I love how you've built a life from grief and refused to let it break you. And I love... His voice roughened. I love that you trusted me enough to tell me the truth. Tears slipped down Lena's cheeks, but they were the good kind this time. The kind that came from being seen, fully seen, and chosen anyway. I love you too, she whispered. I've been trying not to because I was so scared, but I do. I love you so much. Ethan kissed her then, slow and deep and full of promise. When they finally pulled apart, the sun was starting to rise, painting the room in shades of gold. So what now? Lena asked. Now? Ethan smiled. Now we keep doing what we've been doing, taking it one day at a time, building something real. With honesty this time. With honesty. He kissed her again, briefer this time. And with love. Lots and lots of love. From down the hall, they heard the telltale sounds of Poppy waking up, the rustle of blankets, a soft babble, then the inevitable call of "Mama!" Lena started to get up, but Ethan caught her hand. "Can I help? With the morning routine?" It was such a small question, but it felt monumental, letting him into this part of her life, the ordinary morning chaos of parenting. "Yeah," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I'd like that." They walked down the hall together toward the sound of Poppy's voice, toward the start of something new and terrifying and beautiful. And for the first time since her sister died, Lena felt like maybe, just maybe, everything was going to be okay. Poppy was standing in her crib when they opened the door, her hair sticking up in wild directions and her sleep sack twisted around her legs. The moment she saw Lena, her face lit up with that pure, uncomplicated joy that only toddlers could manage before coffee. "Mama!" She lifted her arms, demanding to be picked up. Lena moved forward automatically, but Ethan was already there, lifting Poppy out of the crib with the easy confidence of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. "Good morning, sunshine," he said, settling her on his hip. "Did you sleep good?" Poppy studied him for a moment, processing this unexpected development. Then she pointed at him and announced, "Etan." "That's right," Ethan grinned. "You remember me." "Etan stay?" Poppy looked between him and Lena, her expression hopeful in a way that made Lena's chest ache. "Just for a little bit," Lena said, moving closer to brush Poppy's wild hair down. "Then he has to go home to Hazel." "Hazel!" Poppy bounced excitedly in Ethan's arms. "Hazel, my friend!" "She is your friend," Ethan agreed, "and she misses you. We should all hang out soon." The casual way he said it, "we should all hang out," hit Lena with unexpected force. This was what normal looked like, what family looked like. Not the grief-stricken, white-knuckled survival she'd been managing for 2 years, but actual living. The kind with plans and people and mornings that started with someone else helping with the chaos. They made breakfast together, Ethan scrambling eggs while Lena got Poppy situated in her high chair with a sippy cup of milk. It should have felt awkward, this domestic dance in her small kitchen, but instead it felt natural, like they'd been doing this for years instead of months. "You're good at this," Lena observed, watching him plate the eggs with one hand while using the other to keep Poppy from launching her cup across the room. "Lots of practice." Ethan set a plate in front of her, then one in front of Poppy with eggs cut into tiny, toddler-safe pieces. "Emily used to say I was better at breakfast than she was. I think she just hated mornings, but I'll take the compliment." It was the first time he'd mentioned Emily so casually, without the weight of grief making his voice heavy. Lena wondered if that was what healing looked like, being able to speak about the people you'd lost without falling apart. She hoped so. She hoped someday she could talk about Claire that way, with love, instead of just pain. "What was she like?" Lena asked quietly. "Emily?" Ethan considered the question while cutting up his own eggs. "Smart, funny, terrible at keeping plants alive, but convinced she could grow a garden anyway." His smile was sad, but genuine. "She was a teacher, 4th grade. The kids loved her because she made learning fun, even when they were studying stuff like fractions or state capitals. Hazel must take after her." "Yeah," Ethan's voice went soft. "She has Emily's eyes, and her stubbornness, and her big heart." He paused. "Sometimes I look at her and it's like seeing Emily again. Other times she's completely her own person, and I'm amazed by who she's becoming." Poppy chose that moment to smash her eggs with both hands, laughing maniacally as pieces flew across her tray. Lena reached for a washcloth, but Ethan was already wiping Poppy's hands, his expression more amused than frustrated. "Every meal is an adventure, huh?" he said to Poppy, who grinned at him like she'd accomplished something monumental. "You have no idea," Lena muttered. Last week she discovered she could fling yogurt at the ceiling if she flicked her spoon just right. Hazel went through a phase where she'd only eat food that was blue. "Do you know how hard it is to make an entire meal blue?" Ethan shook his head. "I bought food coloring in bulk." They laughed together, and Lena felt something shift in her chest. This was what she'd been missing. Not just romance or companionship, but partnership. Someone to share the absurd, exhausting, beautiful chaos of raising a child. Someone who understood that love sometimes looked like cleaning smashed eggs off a high chair at 7 in the morning. Ethan left an hour later, kissing Lena goodbye at the door, while Poppy waved enthusiastically from her spot on the floor, already absorbed in stacking blocks. "I'll call you later," he promised, his hand lingering on Lena's waist. "Maybe we can do something this weekend? All four of us?" "I'd like that." Lena kissed him again, softer this time. "And Ethan? Thank you. For last night. For understanding." "Nothing to thank me for." He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "I'll always choose you, Lena. Both of you. Remember that." The words followed her through the rest of the day, warming her from the inside out. She'd been so certain that telling the truth would end everything, that Ethan would see her differently once he knew. But if anything, he seemed to see her more clearly now. All of her. And he'd chosen to stay. The weekend arrived with unseasonably warm weather, the kind of November day that felt like a gift. Ethan picked them up Saturday morning, Hazel already bouncing in her booster seat with barely contained energy. "We're going to the park," Hazel announced the second Poppy was buckled in. "And Daddy says we can get ice cream after, if we're good." "Ice cream in November?" Lena raised an eyebrow at Ethan. "Ice cream knows no season," he said solemnly. "Besides, it's practically 70 degrees. That's summer weather." "It's 62. "Close enough?" He pulled out of her apartment complex, one hand on the wheel, the other reaching across to squeeze hers. In the back seat, the girls were already chattering at each other in that way young children had, where neither was really listening but both were talking enthusiastically. The park was crowded with families taking advantage of the weather. Kids ran between playground equipment while parents clustered on benches, juggling coffee cups and conversations. Lena helped Poppy out of the car, immediately grabbing her hand before she could bolt toward the slides. "Stay close, baby girl. There's a lot of people here." "I go slide." Poppy tugged toward the playground. "We'll go together." Lena looked up to find Ethan and Hazel waiting for them. Hazel had already spotted the monkey bars and was vibrating with impatience. "Can we split up?" Ethan suggested. "I'll take Hazel to the big kid area, you take Poppy to the toddler section, and we'll meet back here in 30 minutes? It was practical, but Lena felt a flicker of disappointment. She'd been looking forward to doing this together, as a unit, but Hazel was already dragging Ethan toward the monkey bars, and Poppy was pulling her toward the small slides, so she nodded. The toddler area was pure chaos, kids running in every direction, parents hovering anxiously, the occasional meltdown over turn-taking or stolen toys. Poppy made a beeline for the slide, scrambling up the steps with more confidence than safety awareness. Lena spotted her at the bottom, ready to catch her if needed, but Poppy slid down perfectly, landing on her feet with a triumphant, "I did it! You did!" Lena caught her in a hug. "Such a big girl!" They'd been playing for maybe 10 minutes when Lena noticed the woman watching them. She was youngish, probably early 30s, with a baby strapped to her chest and a toddler building sandcastles nearby. She'd been glancing over repeatedly, and now she was walking toward them with the kind of purposeful expression that made Lena's defenses rise. "Excuse me," the woman said, her voice friendly but curious. "I'm sorry to bother you, but is that your daughter?" Lena's heart lurched. "Yes. Why?" "Oh, no reason. She just looks so much like my sister-in-law's daughter. I thought maybe they were related." The woman laughed. "Small world if they were." "We're not from here originally," Lena said carefully, her hand finding Poppy's shoulder. "We moved here a couple years ago." "From where?" "Georgia." The lie came automatically now, smooth and practiced. She'd been lying about this for so long that the truth felt like a foreign language. "Oh, how nice. We're from—" "Mama, swing," Poppy interrupted, tugging at Lena's hand. "I go swing now." "Sorry," Lena said to the woman, grateful for the interruption. Toddler attention span. She steered Poppy toward the swings, her heart still racing. It had been innocent, just a curious stranger making conversation, but it reminded Lena how fragile her carefully constructed story was. One wrong question, one person who knew Claire, one slip of the tongue, and everything could unravel. By the time they met back up with Ethan and Hazel, Lena had managed to calm down. The girls were immediately absorbed in playing together, running toward the open field to chase each other in circles. Ethan settled beside Lena on a bench, his arm sliding around her shoulders. "You okay? You look tense." "I'm fine." Lena forced herself to relax into his embrace. Just some random woman asking questions about Poppy. What kind of questions? Nothing bad, just asking if she was mine, saying she looked like someone she knew. Lena watched Poppy stumble and get back up, laughing. It just reminded me that people notice things, that the story I've built could fall apart so easily. Ethan was quiet for a moment. Do you regret telling me? No. Lena turned to look at him. Never. You needed to know. I wanted you to know. She paused. But it makes me realize how many other people I've lied to. My co-workers, Poppy's daycare, every person who's ever asked about her father or my pregnancy. I've built this whole false narrative, and sometimes I forget what's real and what's the story I tell. The love is real, Ethan said firmly. That's what matters. The rest is just protective coloring. Protective coloring that could blow up in my face. Maybe. Ethan pulled her closer. Or maybe people would understand if they knew the truth. Maybe you're not giving them enough credit. Or maybe they'd judge me for lying. Lena's voice went sharp. Maybe they'd think I manipulated them, or that I'm not fit to raise her, or that I should have been honest from the start. Hey! Ethan turned her face toward him. You did what you thought was best. You protected yourself and Poppy. There's no shame in that. Lena wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to. But the fear that had been driving her decisions for 2 years didn't just disappear because one person accepted her truth. It sat in her chest like a stone, heavy and cold. They got ice cream after the park, both girls ending up with more of it on their faces than in their mouths. Hazel insisted on getting mint chocolate chip, while Poppy wanted pink, which turned out to be strawberry. They sat outside the shop, the girls sticky and happy, Ethan and Lena watching them with the kind of exhausted contentment that came from successful parenting. They're good together, Ethan observed, watching Hazel help Poppy reach her ice cream when it started to melt too fast. Like sisters. The word hit Lena harder than it should have. Sisters. She thought about Claire, about the sister she'd lost, about the gaping hole in her life that would never be filled, and she thought about these two little girls growing up together, building their own bond. Yeah, she managed. They are. That night, after Ethan had dropped them home, and Poppy was finally asleep, Lena pulled out the box she kept in her closet. She rarely looked at it. It hurt too much. But tonight she needed to see Claire's face, needed to remember why she'd made the choices she had. The photos were all there, preserved in chronological order. Claire as a teenager, wild and laughing. Claire graduating from cosmetology school, her smile bright with possibility. Claire with her boyfriend Jason, both of them young and in love and completely unaware that their time together was measured in months, not years. And then the last photos. Claire pregnant, glowing despite her grief over Jason's death. Claire in the hospital, holding Poppy with a mixture of exhaustion and fierce love. Claire's face, so pale, her eyes already starting to drift closed as the life bled out of her. Lena traced her sister's face with one finger, tears streaming down her cheeks. I'm doing my best, she whispered to the photograph. I know I'm screwing up, but I'm trying so hard. The photo didn't answer, but Lena imagined what Claire would say. Her sister had never been one for self-pity or regret. She'd lived boldly, loved completely, and faced death with the same fierce courage she'd brought to everything else. Claire would tell her to stop being scared, to take the leap, to build a life instead of just surviving. The thought was both comforting and terrifying. Over the next few weeks, Lena and Ethan fell into a rhythm that felt dangerously close to permanent. They traded off who hosted dinner, their schedules syncing up so naturally it was almost eerie. The girls became inseparable, Hazel appointing herself Poppy's protector and teacher, showing her everything from how to properly pour water for dolls' tea parties to the correct way to roar like a dinosaur. Ethan's mother, Patricia, was folded into the mix too. She was a warm, no-nonsense woman in her 60s who'd raised 3 sons and wasn't intimidated by anything, especially not a 26-year-old nurse with trust issues. So you're the one who's got my son smiling again, Patricia said the first time they met properly, at Ethan's place for Sunday dinner. Lena had been helping Poppy wash her hands, but she looked up to find Patricia watching her with shrewd, kind eyes. I hope that's a good thing. It's a very good thing. Patricia dried the dish she'd been washing. He's been sleepwalking through life since Emily died, going through the motions for Hazel's sake, but not really living. You've changed that. I haven't done anything special. You're here. You're real. You let him be himself. Patricia set the dish in the rack. That's more special than you think. Lena found herself blinking back tears. She'd been so focused on her own fears, her own secrets, that she hadn't fully processed what Ethan had gone through. Losing his wife at 29, raising a toddler alone, carrying grief that probably weighed as much as hers did. Can I ask you something? Lena said quietly, making sure Poppy was occupied with the hand soap bubbles. Of course. Did she know, at the end, that he'd be okay? Patricia's expression softened with old pain. She made him promise to move on, to find someone else, to not let grief turn him into a ghost. She paused. It nearly killed him to make that promise, but he did, because he loved her enough to honor what she wanted, even if it hurt. That must have been so hard. Love usually is. Patricia turned to face Lena fully. But it's worth it. The hard parts, the scary parts, all of it. It's worth it when you find someone who sees you and chooses you anyway. The words echoed in Lena's head for days. Sees you and chooses you anyway. Ethan had seen her, the grief, the lies, the fear, and he'd stayed. But there were still people who didn't know, people who mattered. The breaking point came on a Tuesday in early December. Lena was at work, 3 hours into a night shift, when she got called to help with a new admission. A 2-year-old girl with pneumonia, her mother anxious and exhausted from 2 days of spiking fevers and labored breathing. Lena went through the admission process on autopilot, vitals, medical history, comfort measures. But when she asked about the father, the mother's face crumpled. He's not in the picture, she said, her voice thick. Never was. Left when he found out I was pregnant. I'm sorry, Lena said automatically. Everyone's sorry. The mother's laugh was bitter. But sorry doesn't pay the bills or take care of her when she's sick. Sorry doesn't make me any less alone. The words hit Lena like a slap. She saw herself in this woman, the exhaustion, the isolation, the weight of doing it all alone. Except Lena wasn't alone anymore. She had Ethan. She had a chance at something real. And she was jeopardizing it by continuing to lie to everyone else in her life. When her shift ended at 7 in the morning, Lena didn't go home. Instead, she drove to the cemetery where Claire was buried. She hadn't been here in months. It hurt too much, seeing her sister's name carved in stone, the dates that marked a life cut impossibly short. The grave was simple. Just a headstone with Claire's name, her dates, and the words beloved sister and mother. Someone, probably the cemetery staff, had left artificial flowers, their bright colors garish against the winter-brown grass. Lena sank down onto the cold ground, not caring that the dampness was seeping through her scrubs. I don't know what to do, she told the headstone. I've been lying to protect Poppy, to protect myself, but now I've met someone, and he knows the truth, and it makes me realize how many other people I've lied to. The wind rustled through the bare trees, the only answer. I'm scared, Lena continued, her voice breaking. I'm scared of what people will think, scared of being judged, scared that if I tell the truth, someone will try to take her from me. She pressed her fist against her chest. She's mine, Claire. I know she came from you, but she's mine now, and I can't lose her. She stayed there for an hour, talking to her sister, crying into her hands, feeling the grief that she'd been holding at arm's length for 2 years. When she finally stood to leave, she felt hollowed out, but clearer, like she'd lanced a wound that had been festering. She knew what she had to do. She had to start telling the truth. Not to everyone, not all at once, but to the people who mattered. Her coworkers. Poppy's daycare. The friends she'd been keeping at arm's length because getting close meant risking exposure. It wouldn't be easy. Some people would judge her. Some would pity her. Some would probably think she'd been manipulating them all along. But Ethan was right. The love was real. Everything else was just details. The first person she told was Marissa, her coworker. They were in the break room during a rare quiet moment, and Lena just said it. Poppy's not biologically mine. She's my sister's daughter. My sister died in childbirth. Marissa stared at her for a long moment. Then she set down her coffee and pulled Lena into a fierce hug. Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. You're not mad that I didn't tell you? Mad? Marissa pulled back, looking genuinely confused. Why would I be mad? You've been carrying this alone for how long? 2 years. 2 years. Marissa shook her head. God, Lena, you should have said something. We could have helped, supported you. I didn't want pity. It's not pity to care about someone who's going through hell. Marissa's eyes were fierce. You're allowed to lean on people. You're allowed to not have it all together. The conversation broke something open in Lena. By the end of her shift, half the pediatric nursing staff knew the truth, and every single one of them had responded with compassion instead of judgment. They asked about Poppy, about how Lena was managing, about whether she needed anything. Several offered to babysit. One nurse, whose own sister had died young, just held Lena's hand and said, You're doing a good job. She's lucky to have you. Lena cried in the parking lot before driving home, overwhelmed by the kindness she'd been denying herself by keeping everything locked away. Next was Poppy's daycare. The director, Miss Sarah, listened to Lena's halting explanation with calm professionalism. When Lena finished, Sarah just nodded. Thank you for telling me, she said. It doesn't change anything about Poppy's enrollment or care, but it helps us understand her background better. And you? She paused. You know we have resources if you ever need support. Grief counseling, single-parent groups, that kind of thing. I'm okay, Lena said automatically. I'm sure you are, but the offer stands. Sarah's smile was gentle. You're doing an amazing job with her. She's happy, well-adjusted, and clearly loved. That's what matters. The validation shouldn't have meant so much, but it did. Lena left the daycare feeling lighter, like she'd been carrying a backpack full of rocks, and someone had just removed half of them. When she told Ethan what she'd done, he pulled her into his arms and held her for a long moment. I'm proud of you, he murmured into her hair. I know that was hard. It was easier than I thought it would be, Lena admitted. Everyone was so kind, so understanding. Because you're not doing anything wrong. Ethan pulled back to look at her. You've been punishing yourself for a choice that was actually incredibly brave. It's time to stop. I'm trying, Lena managed to smile. It's a work in progress. Everything worth doing is. Ethan kissed her forehead. And speaking of work in progress, Hazel's been asking when we can have a sleepover. All 4 of us. Lena's heart did something complicated. Like, at your place? Or yours, doesn't matter. She just wants to wake up and have Poppy there for Saturday morning cartoons. He paused. No pressure. I know it's a big step, but I wanted you to know she's ready for it. We're ready for it. Whenever you are. Lena thought about it. Waking up with Ethan, making breakfast for all 4 of them, the girls giggling in their pajamas. It sounded perfect and terrifying in equal measure. Maybe next weekend? She heard herself say. At your place, since it's bigger? Ethan's smile could have lit up the entire city. Yeah? Yeah. Lena kissed him, soft and sure. Let's do it. The decision felt monumental, like she was stepping off a cliff. But Ethan was there to catch her, his arms solid and real, and for the first time in 2 years, Lena thought maybe, just maybe, she was ready to fly. The week leading up to the sleepover felt like preparing for something momentous, even though Lena kept telling herself it was just one night, just pajamas and cartoons and breakfast in the morning. Nothing that should make her hand shake while she packed Poppy's overnight bag or second-guess every item she folded into it. You're overthinking this, she muttered to herself, staring at the 3 different pairs of pajamas she'd laid out on her bed. Poppy toddled over, grabbing the ones with dinosaurs on them. These, Mama. Hazel like dinosaurs. You're right, baby girl. Hazel does like dinosaurs. Lena folded the dinosaur pajamas into the bag, then added the other 2 pairs anyway, because what if Poppy spilled something or had an accident or decided she hated dinosaurs between now and tomorrow morning? Her phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. Stop panicking. We have everything you could possibly need here. Just bring yourselves. Lena smiled despite her nerves and typed back. How do you know I'm panicking? Because I know you, and because I can practically feel your anxiety from across town. It's going to be great, I promise. She wanted to believe him. She did believe him, mostly. But there was something about this step that felt irreversible. Like, once they did this, there was no going back to casual dating or taking things slow. This was family territory. This was waking up together in morning breath and seeing each other at your most vulnerable. This was real. Saturday arrived with gray skies and the promise of rain. Lena loaded Poppy into the car, along with enough supplies for a week-long expedition, not a single overnight stay. The drive to Ethan's house took 15 minutes, but Lena's heart was racing like she'd run a marathon by the time she pulled into his driveway. His house was a small craftsman-style home with a wide front porch and flower boxes that were empty this time of year. Ethan had told her he'd bought it right after Emily's diagnosis, wanting to give Hazel something stable during the chaos. Looking at it now, Lena could see the love in every detail. The fresh paint, the well-maintained yard, the wooden swing hanging from the porch beam that had clearly been handmade. The front door flew open before Lena could even unbuckle Poppy, and Hazel came barreling out in her socked feet, Ethan trailing behind her. "They're here! Daddy, they're here!" Hazel bounced on the porch steps, barely containing herself. "I see that, Bug. Maybe let them actually get out of the car before you tackle them." Ethan's voice was amused, his eyes finding Lena's over his daughter's head. The warmth in his gaze settled something anxious in her chest. Lena got Poppy out of her car seat, and the little girl immediately squealed, "Hazel!" The two girls collided in a hug that was more collision than embrace, both of them talking over each other in that incomprehensible way young children had. Ethan approached the car, taking the overnight bag from Lena's shoulder before she could protest. "You brought the whole apartment, didn't you?" "I might have overpacked." "Might have?" He peered into the bag, his eyebrows rising. "Lena, this is enough stuff for a month." "I just wanted to be prepared." "For what? The apocalypse?" But he was smiling, and when he kissed her, soft and brief, Lena felt some of her tension dissolve. "Come on, let's get you guys inside before it starts raining." The interior of Ethan's house was exactly what Lena had expected, warm and lived in, with hardwood floors that showed their age and built-in bookshelves that Ethan had clearly made himself. Toys were scattered across the living room despite what looked like a recent attempt at cleaning, and the walls were covered with photos. Emily was in many of them, her smile bright and alive, and Lena felt a strange twinge looking at her. Not jealousy exactly, but something more complicated. This woman had loved Ethan first, had given him Hazel, had built a life in this house that Lena was now stepping into. "I kept the pictures up," Ethan said quietly, following her gaze. "For Hazel. I didn't want her to forget her mom." "I wouldn't want you to take them down." Lena squeezed his hand. "She's part of your story, part of Hazel's story." "Thank you for understanding that." Ethan's voice was rough with emotion. He cleared his throat. "So, tour? Or should we just let the girls destroy the playroom while we pretend to supervise?" "Destroy the playroom sounds good." The playroom was a converted sunroom off the kitchen, filled with more toys than any two children could possibly need. Hazel immediately began pulling out her favorites to show Poppy, while Ethan and Lena settled onto the couch in the living room, close enough to hear the girls but giving them space to play. "This is nice," Lena said, tucking herself against Ethan's side. "Scary, but nice." "Why scary?" "Because it feels real. Like we're actually doing this. Building something." She paused. "What if I mess it up?" "You won't." Ethan's arm tightened around her shoulders. "And even if you do, we'll figure it out. That's what people do." From the playroom came a shriek of laughter, followed by Hazel's voice. "No, Poppy, you have to make the dinosaur roar like this. Roar!" A moment later, Poppy's attempt at a roar echoed back, sounding more like a squeaky door than a dinosaur. Both adults smiled. "They're good together," Lena observed, not for the first time. "Yeah." Ethan was quiet for a moment. "Can I tell you something?" "Always." "The first time I saw you with Poppy at that cafe, I knew." His voice was soft. "I knew you were someone special. The way you looked at her, the way you held her, the way you were so ready to bolt because you thought I'd judge you. I just knew." "Knew what?" "That I was going to fall in love with you." Ethan turned to look at her. "I tried to talk myself out of it. Told myself it was too fast, too risky, that I should protect Hazel and myself. But you can't logic your way out of love. It just happens. Lena felt tears sting her eyes. I fought it too, for weeks. I kept telling myself this couldn't work, that I should end it before it got serious. She laughed, the sound watery. Clearly that worked out well. I'm glad it didn't work out. Ethan kissed her temple. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad we're doing this. They spent the afternoon in comfortable domesticity, making grilled cheese for lunch, watching the girls play, occasionally intervening in minor disputes over toy ownership. It should have felt overwhelming, 4 people in one space, but instead it felt natural, like pieces clicking into place. When evening came, they made dinner together while the girls sat at the kitchen table, coloring with an intensity that suggested they were creating masterpieces. Ethan moved around his kitchen with easy confidence, and Lena found herself watching him more than helping, mesmerized by the simple competence of his movements. You're staring, he said, without looking up from the vegetables he was chopping. You're worth staring at. Ethan glanced up, a smile playing at his lips. Careful, or I'm going to get ideas about what happens after the girls go to bed. Heat pooled in Lena's stomach. They hadn't slept together yet, hadn't had the opportunity with their complicated schedules and ever-present children, but the promise had been building between them for weeks, a tension that was both thrilling and terrifying. Maybe that's what I want, she said, surprising herself with her boldness. Ethan set down his knife, his eyes darkening. Lena, Daddy, I'm hungry. Hazel's timing was impeccable. When's dinner? Soon, bug. Ethan's gaze held Lena's for another beat before he turned back to his cutting board. Very soon. Dinner was chaotic in the best way. Poppy managed to get spaghetti sauce in her hair despite Lena's best efforts, and Hazel talked non-stop about everything from her upcoming school play to her theory that dinosaurs would make excellent pets if they were still alive. Ethan fielded her rambling with the patience of someone who'd heard similar monologues 1,000 times before. After dinner came bath time, which somehow turned into both girls ending up in the same tub despite Lena's initial protest that they should take turns. They're fine, Ethan assured her, sitting on the bathroom floor while the girls played with foam letters that stuck to the tile. Hazel's had friends over for bath time before. But what if she gets wet in a bathtub? Ethan's smile was gentle. Lena, you can relax. I promise nothing catastrophic is going to happen. Lena sat down beside him, watching Poppy stack foam letters with intense concentration while Hazel narrated an elaborate story about a sea monster. I'm not good at relaxing. I've noticed. Ethan bumped his shoulder against hers. But you're allowed to let go sometimes. You don't have to control everything. If I don't control it, it falls apart. Or maybe it doesn't. Maybe it just becomes something different. Ethan reached for her hand. You've been holding everything together by yourself for so long. Let me help carry some of it. The words cracked something open in Lena's chest. She'd been so focused on protecting herself, on maintaining control, that she hadn't fully absorbed what it meant to have a partner. Someone who wanted to share the weight instead of making her carry it alone. I'm trying, she whispered. I know. And you're doing great. Ethan kissed her knuckles. Even if you did pack enough clothes for a month-long trip. Lena laughed despite herself, and the tension in her shoulders eased slightly. Maybe this could work. Maybe she could learn to let go, to trust that everything wouldn't fall apart the moment she stopped white-knuckling her way through life. Getting both girls into pajamas and settled for bedtime took another hour. They decided to let them sleep in Hazel's room, which had twin beds and enough stuffed animals to stock a toy store. Poppy had been skeptical about sleeping somewhere that wasn't her crib, but Hazel's enthusiasm was infectious. It's like a sleepover. Hazel bounced on her bed. We can tell stories and look at the stars through the window and everything. And then we sleep, Ethan added firmly. That's the important part. After stories, Hazel negotiated. After stories, Ethan agreed. They ended up reading 3 books. Poppy curled against Lena while Hazel leaned into Ethan's side. By the 3rd book, both girls' eyes were drooping, and when Ethan finished the last page, Poppy was already asleep. Lena carefully transferred her to the other twin bed, tucking her in with the stuffed elephant she never slept without. Hazel was still awake, fighting sleep with the determination of a child who didn't want to miss anything. "Good night, Bug," Ethan whispered, kissing her forehead. "Is Lena staying forever?" Hazel asked, her voice sleepy but hopeful. Ethan glanced at Lena, something vulnerable in his expression. "Would you like that?" "Yes, then Poppy can be here all the time, and Lena too. She's nice." Hazel yawned. "And she doesn't push me too high on the swings." Lena felt her throat tighten. "Good night, Hazel. Sweet dreams." "Night." Hazel's eyes finally closed, and within minutes her breathing had evened out. Lena and Ethan tiptoed out of the room, leaving the door cracked open. The house felt different in the quiet, more intimate, the space shrinking down to just the two of them. "So," Ethan said, his voice low, "they're asleep." "They are." Lena's heart was suddenly pounding. "We could watch a movie or talk, or—" Ethan stepped closer, his hand finding her waist. "Or I could finally do what I've been thinking about for weeks." "What have you been thinking about?" Lena's voice came out breathier than she intended. "This." Ethan kissed her, and it was different from all the other kisses they'd shared. Deeper, more urgent, weighted with months of building tension and feelings they'd both been too scared to fully express. Lena's hands found his hair, his shoulders, pulling him closer until there was no space left between them. They made it to his bedroom, barely. Ethan kicked the door closed behind them, his hands already working at the hem of Lena's shirt. She helped him pull it over her head, then reached for his belt, her fingers fumbling slightly with nerves and anticipation. "We don't have to—" Ethan started, but Lena cut him off with another kiss. "I want to. I've wanted to." She pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. "I want you." Something in Ethan's expression shifted, becoming more intense. "I love you," he said, his voice rough. "I need you to know that. This isn't just— it means something. I love you too." The words felt both terrifying and right. "It means something to me too." They took their time, learning each other with a tenderness that made Lena's chest ache. Ethan was careful with her, attentive, his hands mapping her body like he was memorizing every detail. And when they finally came together, it felt like more than just physical release. It felt like coming home. Afterward, they lay tangled together in Ethan's bed, Lena's head on his chest, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder. The room was dark except for the streetlight filtering through the curtains, casting everything in soft shadows. "That was—" Lena started. "Yeah." Ethan's voice rumbled in his chest. "It really was." They were quiet for a while, comfortable in the silence. Then Lena said, "Hazel asked if I was staying forever." "I heard." Ethan's hand stilled on her shoulder. "I'm sorry if that was too much. She doesn't really understand the concept of— what if I wanted to?" The words came out before Lena could stop them. "Not right now, obviously, but someday. What if I wanted to stay forever?" Ethan shifted so he could look at her properly. "Are you asking what I think you're asking?" "I don't know what I'm asking." Lena felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I'm just thinking out loud about the future, about what this could be." "I think about that too." Ethan's voice was serious now. "All the time, actually. I think about waking up with you every morning, about the girls growing up together, about building a life that's ours, not just mine or yours." He paused. "But I don't want to rush you. I know you've been through a lot, and you need time. What if I don't need more time?" Lena sat up, pulling the sheet with her. "What if I already know what I want?" Ethan sat up too, his expression cautious. "What do you want?" "This, you, us." Lena gestured around the room, encompassing the house, the girls sleeping down the hall, the life they were building. "I want to stop being scared and just be happy. With you." "Lena," Ethan cupped her face in his hands. "Are you sure? Because once we go down this road, I'm sure." And she was. For the first time in 2 years, she was absolutely certain of something. "I'm terrified, but I'm sure." Ethan kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. When they pulled apart, he was smiling. "So what does this mean, practically speaking?" "I don't know." Lena laughed, feeling lighter than she had in months. Maybe we start with more sleepovers, work our way up to moving in together? See how it goes? I like that plan. Ethan pulled her back down against his chest. Slow and steady, but moving in the right direction. The right direction, Lena echoed, letting her eyes drift closed. She felt safe here, wrapped in Ethan's arms, knowing the girls were sleeping peacefully down the hall. This was what family felt like, what home felt like. She must have dozed off because the next thing she knew, pale morning light was filtering through the curtains and she could hear whispered voices from somewhere in the house. Ethan was still asleep beside her, one arm thrown over his face, and Lena allowed herself a moment to just look at him. The stubble on his jaw, the way his hair stuck up at odd angles, the peaceful expression on his face. This was the man she loved, the man who'd seen her at her worst and chosen to stay. The whispered voices got louder, followed by the unmistakable sound of small feet running down the hallway. Lena quickly grabbed Ethan's t-shirt from the floor and pulled it on just as the bedroom door burst open. "Daddy! Lena! Wake up!" Hazel stood in the doorway, Poppy right behind her, both of them in their pajamas with their hair sticking up in wild directions. "We're hungry and we want pancakes," Ethan groaned, his arm dropping from his face. "What time is it?" 7:30, Lena supplied, checking her phone. "On a Saturday. You guys couldn't have slept until at least 8?" But Ethan was smiling, sitting up and reaching for his own discarded clothes. "We tried," Hazel insisted, "but Poppy woke up and wanted you, and then I was awake, and we were hungry, and—" "Pancakes, I got it." Ethan pulled on his jeans. "Give us 5 minutes to get dressed, and we'll make breakfast, okay?" The girls scampered off, their voices carrying back down the hall as they discussed what kind of pancakes they wanted. Lena looked at Ethan, suddenly feeling shy despite what they'd done last night. "Good morning," she said softly. "Best morning," Ethan corrected, pulling her in for a kiss. "First of many, I hope." "Yeah," Lena smiled against his lips. "First of many." They made it to the kitchen to find the girls had already pulled out every ingredient they thought might be relevant to pancake making, creating a flour-dusted disaster zone on the counter. "We were helping," Hazel announced proudly. "I can see that." Ethan surveyed the damage with remarkable calm. "How about you guys help by sitting at the table and telling us what kind of pancakes you want?" "Chocolate chip!" both girls shouted in unison, then dissolved into giggles. Lena and Ethan worked together to make breakfast, moving around each other with an ease that felt practiced despite this being their first time. Lena flipped pancakes while Ethan handled bacon, and they fell into a rhythm that felt as natural as breathing. This was what the future looked like, Lena realized. Not some far-off dream, but right here, right now. Messy kitchens and giggling children, and a man who looked at her like she hung the moon. It was ordinary and extraordinary all at once. "You okay?" Ethan asked, noticing her stillness. "Yeah." Lena smiled, feeling tears prick her eyes for entirely different reasons than usual. "I'm really okay." They ate breakfast together, the girls chattering about cartoons they wanted to watch and games they wanted to play. Patricia called midway through to check on them, and Hazel insisted on putting her on speakerphone to tell her grandmother all about the sleepover in exhausting detail. "Sounds like everyone had a good time," Patricia said, her voice warm with amusement. "The best time," Hazel confirmed. After they hung up, Ethan caught Lena's eye across the table and mouthed, "She's going to want details later." Lena mouthed back, "What are you going to tell her?" "The truth. That I'm in love with an amazing woman who makes me happier than I've been in years." He said it casually, like it wasn't the most significant thing he could have said. Lena felt her heart swell. She reached across the table for his hand, threading their fingers together. "I love you too, both of you," she added, glancing at Hazel, who was too absorbed in her pancakes to notice the moment happening around her. The rest of the day passed in a blur of contentment. They took the girls to the park despite the gray weather, watched movies curled up on the couch, made dinner together again. And when it was time for Lena and Poppy to go home, both girls cried, clinging to each other like they were being separated forever instead of just until tomorrow. "We'll see each other soon," Lena promised, peeling Poppy away from Hazel. "I promise." "Tomorrow?" Hazel asked hopefully. "Maybe not tomorrow, but soon." Ethan ruffled his daughter's hair. "We'll figure out a schedule, okay?" Driving home, Poppy fell asleep almost immediately, exhausted from 2 days of non-stop playing. Lena glanced at her in the rearview mirror, her heart full to bursting. This was her daughter. This beautiful, perfect little girl who'd come into her life in the worst possible way and somehow become the best thing that had ever happened to her. And now she had Ethan, had Hazel, had the promise of a future that looked nothing like the lonely survival she'd been managing for 2 years. When Lena's phone buzzed with a text, she waited until she was stopped at a red light to check it. "Ethan, already miss you, both of you." She typed back, "Same. Thank you for this weekend, for everything. Thank you for taking a chance on me, on us. I love you. I love you too." The light turned green, and Lena drove toward home with a smile on her face and hope blooming in her chest. She'd spent so long being afraid of judgment, of loss, of opening herself up to love again. But loving Ethan didn't feel scary anymore. It felt right, like the piece of her life that had been missing had finally clicked into place. She still had fears, still worried about what would happen when Poppy got old enough to ask questions about her birth parents, still wondered if she was doing right by Claire's memory. But those fears felt manageable now, like something she could face with Ethan beside her instead of something she had to carry alone. That night, after putting Poppy to bed, Lena pulled out the box of photos again. But this time, looking at Claire's face didn't bring just pain. It brought gratitude. Gratitude that her sister had trusted her with Poppy. Gratitude for the love they'd shared. And gratitude for the strength Claire had given her, the courage to build a life from the ashes of grief. "I think you'd like him," Lena whispered to the photograph. "Ethan. He's kind and patient, and he loves Poppy like she's his own. And Hazel is wonderful. She's going to be such a good big sister figure." She paused, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I wish you were here to meet them. I wish you could see who Poppy's becoming, but I think you'd be happy with how things are turning out." The photograph didn't answer, but Lena felt something settle in her chest anyway. Peace, maybe. Or acceptance. The understanding that she could honor Claire's memory and still build a new life. That loving Ethan didn't mean forgetting her sister. That being happy didn't mean the grief disappeared. It just meant she was strong enough to carry both. She tucked the photos back into the box and returned it to the closet, but this time she didn't shove it into the back corner like something shameful. She left it within easy reach, a reminder that Claire would always be part of their story, part of Poppy's story, and that was okay. More than okay. It was necessary. The weeks that followed fell into a pattern that felt less like dating and more like building something permanent. Ethan started keeping a drawer at Lena's apartment for the nights he stayed over after the girls were asleep. Lena began leaving spare clothes at his place for the mornings when she'd wake up tangled in his sheets, Patricia having already arrived to get Hazel ready for school. Their schedules synchronized without conscious effort, their lives weaving together like threads in a tapestry. It was Hazel who brought up the wedding first, on a cold January afternoon when all four of them were building a snowman in Ethan's front yard. Well, the adults were building. The girls were mostly just throwing snow at each other and shrieking with laughter. "My friend Emma's mom got married," Hazel announced, patting snow onto the snowman's middle section with serious concentration. "She wore a big white dress and there was cake." "That sounds nice," Ethan said carefully, glancing at Lena over Hazel's head. "Are you and Lena going to get married?" Hazel looked up at her father with the kind of directness that only children could manage. Ethan froze, a handful of snow halfway to the snowman. That's a big question, Bug. "But you love her, right? And she loves you. That's what people do when they love each other. They get married." Hazel's logic was airtight in the way only a 5-year-old's could be. Lena felt her heart hammering. They talked around this topic in vague terms, discussing futures and forevers, but never with such blunt specificity. "Marriage is complicated," Lena said, trying to keep her voice steady. "It's something adults have to think about carefully." "Why? If you love each other, it's not complicated." Hazel returned her attention to the snowman. "I think you should get married. Then Poppy would be my real sister." "She's already your real sister," Ethan said firmly. "You don't need a wedding for that." "But it would be more official." Hazel stood back to examine their snowman. "And there would be cake." "You just want cake," Lena teased, grateful for the levity. "I really do want cake," Hazel admitted. But I also want you to stay forever. You and Poppy. The honesty of it hit Lena square in the chest. She looked at Ethan and found him watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Want, definitely. Hope. And something that looked like a question he was afraid to ask. Later, after the girls had been bundled inside with hot chocolate and were absorbed in a cartoon, Ethan pulled Lena into the kitchen under the pretense of making dinner. So, he said, his hands on the counter on either side of her, trapping her in the best possible way. Marriage. Thoughts? Lena's mouth went dry. Are you asking me what I think you're asking me? Not yet. Ethan's smile was crooked. But I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about it a lot, actually. He paused. Would that terrify you? If I asked? Yes. Lena watched his face fall and quickly added, but in a good way, the kind of terrified that feels like standing on the edge of something amazing. Yeah? The hope in his voice made her heart ache. Yeah. She reached up to cup his face. I love you, Ethan. I love this life we're building. I love waking up with you and making breakfast chaos and watching our girls become sisters. I love all of it. But he could hear the hesitation in her voice. But Poppy's so young. She doesn't understand yet about Claire, about where she came from. And when she's old enough to understand, Lena struggled to find the words. I want her to know her story before we change it again, before we become something official. Does that make sense? Perfect sense. Ethan kissed her forehead. We've got time. There's no rush. I just wanted you to know that I'm thinking about forever. That when you're ready, I'm ready. I'm almost ready, Lena whispered. I'm so close. Then I'll wait. Ethan pulled her close. However long it takes. February arrived with the kind of cold that made Asheville feel like a different city entirely. Lena's shifts at the hospital grew longer as flu season hit hard, and there were nights when she'd come home so exhausted she could barely stand. Ethan would be there, having let himself in with the key she'd given him, with dinner warming in the oven and Poppy already bathed and in pajamas. You don't have to do this, Lena said one night, sinking onto the couch while Ethan brought her a plate of food. I know I don't have to. I want to. He sat beside her, close enough that their thighs touched. That's what partners do. They take care of each other. I'm not used to being taken care of. I've noticed. Ethan's smile was gentle. But you're going to have to get used to it, because I'm not going anywhere. The certainty in his voice made something loosen in Lena's chest. She'd spent so long being the strong one, the one who held everything together, that she'd forgotten what it felt like to lean on someone else. But Ethan made it easy. He made everything easy. It was Patricia who finally pushed the conversation about Poppy's future into the open. She showed up one Saturday morning in March while Ethan was at a job site and Lena was watching both girls at his house. Patricia took one look at Lena's face and declared they needed coffee and adult conversation immediately. The girls are fine playing, Patricia said, steering Lena toward the kitchen. And you look like you need to talk. I'm fine, Lena said automatically. You're exhausted and stressed and trying to hold the world together with your bare hands. Patricia poured 2 cups of coffee and pushed one across the counter. Now talk. What's going on? Maybe it was the kindness in Patricia's voice. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe it was just time. But Lena found herself spilling everything. Her fears about telling Poppy the truth, her worry about changing their family dynamic with marriage, her guilt about being happy when Claire never got the chance. Patricia listened without interrupting, her expression thoughtful. When Lena finally ran out of words, Patricia took a long sip of her coffee. Can I tell you something? Patricia said. About Ethan. About after Emily died. Lena nodded, not trusting her voice. He was a ghost for the first year, going through the motions for Hazel's sake, but not really living, just surviving. Patricia's eyes were distant. I was terrified he'd stay that way forever. That grief would swallow him whole, and I'd lose both my daughter-in-law and my son. But he didn't stay that way. No, because Hazel needed him, and because eventually he realized that Emily wouldn't have wanted him to stop living. Patricia reached across the counter to take Lena's hand. You're doing the same thing. You're surviving instead of living because you feel guilty for being happy. But honey, Claire didn't die so you could spend the rest of your life in grief. She died trusting you to give her daughter a beautiful life, and you can't do that if you're too afraid to actually live it. Tears slipped down Lena's cheeks. What if I tell Poppy the truth, and it changes everything? What if she hates me for lying to her? She won't hate you. She might be confused. She might have questions, but she won't hate you. You're her mother in every way that matters. Patricia squeezed her hand. And as for telling her, you don't have to do it all at once. You can start small. Show her pictures of Claire. Tell her stories. Let her grow up knowing her birth mother loved her, while also knowing that you love her just as much. I don't know how to do that. None of us do. We just figure it out as we go. Patricia smiled. But you're not alone anymore. You have Ethan. You have me. You have people who want to help carry this with you. The conversation stayed with Lena for days. She found herself looking at Poppy differently, seeing not just the toddler she'd been raising, but the child she would become. The child who would eventually ask questions about her daddy, about why she looked different from her cousins, about where she came from. And Lena wanted to have good answers, honest answers. She started small, just like Patricia suggested. She put a photo of Claire on Poppy's bookshelf, right next to the ones of Lena and Ethan and the girls. When Poppy pointed at it one night before bed, Lena took a deep breath. That's Claire, she said softly. She was my sister, and she loved you very, very much. Where Claire? Poppy asked, her 2-year-old mind struggling with the concept. She's in heaven, Lena said, using the simplest explanation she could manage. But she watches over you. She's always watching over you. Poppy studied the photo with serious concentration, then turned to hug Lena tightly. Love, Mama. I love you too, baby girl. Lena held her close, tears streaming down her face. So much. It wasn't a full explanation. Poppy was too young for that. But it was a start. A foundation they could build on as she grew older, as her questions became more complex, as she needed more than simple answers. When Lena told Ethan about it later that night, he pulled her into his arms and held her for a long time. I'm proud of you, he murmured into her hair. That took courage. It felt like the right time. Lena pulled back to look at him. And I've been thinking about what you said, about forever. Ethan's expression shifted, becoming more alert. Yeah? I'm ready, or I'm as ready as I'm going to be. Lena took a shaky breath. I don't want to wait anymore. I don't want to keep putting off our life because I'm scared. I want to marry you. I want to build a family with you. I want all of it. The smile that broke across Ethan's face was like sunrise. You mean that? I mean that. Lena laughed, feeling lighter than she had in years. So if you were planning to ask me something, now would be a really good time. Well, I don't have a ring yet, Ethan said, his hands framing her face. And this isn't exactly romantic, standing in my kitchen at 10 o'clock at night, but Lena Hart, will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life loving you and Poppy? Will you let our girls grow up as sisters and our family become official in every possible way? Yes. The word came out choked with tears. Yes, absolutely yes. Ethan kissed her then, deep and thorough and full of promise. When they finally broke apart, both of them were crying and laughing at the same time. We should probably tell the girls, Lena said. Probably. Ethan wiped his eyes. Although Hazel's going to say she told us so. She absolutely is. They told the girls the next morning over pancakes. Hazel let out a shriek that probably violated noise ordinances and immediately started planning the wedding in exhaustive detail. Poppy didn't fully understand what was happening, but picked up on the excitement and started clapping her hands and chanting, "Party, party!" There will be a party, Ethan assured her, lifting Poppy onto his hip. A big party where we all get dressed up and eat cake. Cake! Poppy's eyes went wide. Patricia cried when they told her, pulling both Lena and Ethan into a fierce hug. Emily would be so happy, she whispered. She'd love you, Lena. She'd love what you've brought to his life. The words should have felt strange, this blessing from a dead woman's mother. Instead, they felt like permission, like the final piece clicking into place. They planned the wedding for late April, wanting something small and intimate in Ethan's backyard. Nothing fancy, just the people who mattered most and a celebration of the family they'd built from broken pieces. The weeks leading up to the wedding were a blur of preparations and emotions. Lena found a simple white dress that made her feel beautiful without being over the top. Ethan worked on building a wooden arbor for them to stand under, carving their initials into the wood where no one else would see. Hazel took her role as flower girl with deadly seriousness, practicing her walk down the aisle until she had it perfect. And Poppy was fitted for a tiny dress that she immediately tried to take off because it was too scratchy. Through it all, Lena kept the photo of Claire on Poppy's bookshelf. She'd started telling her daughter stories about her aunt, simple ones about how Claire used to sing off-key and make people laugh. Poppy was too young to understand the full truth, but she knew that Claire was special, that she was loved, that she was part of their story. The night before the wedding, Lena couldn't sleep. She lay in her apartment, soon to be her former apartment since she'd be moving into Ethan's house next week, and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow she was getting married. Tomorrow she was officially becoming part of a family. Tomorrow, everything changed. Her phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. "Can't sleep either, thinking about you." She smiled and typed back. Nervous, excited, grateful, a little terrified. "You?" All of the above. This crazy? Getting married after less than a year? Probably. But we've both already lived through the worst things we could imagine. I think we've earned the right to grab happiness when we find it. Lena felt tears sting her eyes. "I love you. I love you too. Now try to sleep. Tomorrow's a big day. Tomorrow's the best day." She must have finally dozed off because the next thing she knew, Marissa was pounding on her door, announcing that it was wedding day and they had a schedule to keep. The morning passed in a whirlwind of hair and makeup, and Poppy trying to eat the flowers meant for her basket. Patricia arrived with Hazel, who was vibrating with excitement. "Do I look okay?" Lena asked, smoothing down her dress for the 100th time. "You look beautiful," Patricia said firmly. "Ethan's going to lose his mind when he sees you." The ceremony was at 4 o'clock, with the spring sun painting everything golden. Ethan's backyard had been transformed with simple white chairs and the arbor he'd built, draped with greenery and white roses. There weren't many guests. Patricia, Lena's co-workers from the hospital, a few of Ethan's friends from work, and Hazel's grandmother on Emily's side, who'd hugged Lena fiercely and told her she was glad Ethan had found love again. Lena stood in the kitchen with Poppy on her hip, listening to the string quartet Ethan had hired play something soft and sweet. Hazel was already outside, having insisted on going first so she could make sure everything was perfect. "You ready, baby girl?" Lena asked Poppy, who was clutching her flower basket with both hands. "Ready, Mama." Poppy nodded seriously. "Then let's go get married." They walked out together, Lena carrying Poppy since there was no way her daughter could manage the aisle walk without getting distracted. The moment they appeared, the music shifted to something more significant, and everyone stood. But Lena only had eyes for Ethan. He was standing under the arbor in a dark blue suit, his hands clasped in front of him, and when he saw her, his face did something that made her knees weak. Love, pure and uncomplicated, shone in his expression. Beside him, Hazel was bouncing on her toes, her flower crown slightly askew. Lena walked toward them, toward her future, with her daughter in her arms and her heart full to bursting. When she reached the arbor, Ethan took Poppy from her arms, settling the toddler on his hip while reaching for Lena's hand with the other. "Hi," he whispered. "Hi." Lena felt tears already threatening. "You look good. You look incredible." Ethan's thumb traced circles on her palm. "Ready to do this?" So ready. The ceremony was short and sweet, the officiant keeping it simple because both girls were starting to get restless. They'd written their own vows, and when it was Lena's turn, she looked at Ethan and felt every wall she'd built over the past 2 years crumble completely. "I never thought I'd have this," she said, her voice shaking. "After I lost my sister, after I became a mother overnight, I thought I'd spend the rest of my life just surviving, just getting through each day. But then I met you, and you showed me what it means to actually live. You saw me at my worst, heard my darkest secrets, and you chose to stay. You chose us. And I promise you, Ethan, I will spend the rest of my life choosing you back. I will love you and Hazel with everything I have. I will build a life with you that honors the people we've lost while celebrating the family we're creating. I will be your partner, your friend, your wife, and I will never ever take for granted the gift of being loved by you." Ethan was crying openly now, not even trying to hide it. When it was his turn, he handed Poppy to Patricia and took both of Lena's hands in his. "Lena, you walked into my life carrying grief and courage in equal measure, and you made me remember what it felt like to hope. You showed me that my heart was big enough to love again without dishonoring what I had before. You gave Hazel a mother figure who treats her with kindness and respect, and you gave me a family I thought I'd lost forever." His voice cracked. "I promise to love you through every hard day and celebrate every good one. I promise to help you carry your grief and share your joy. I promise to be the father Poppy deserves and the husband you need. I promise to build a home where both our daughters know they're loved, where honesty matters more than perfection, and where we face everything together. I love you, Lena. I love all of you, and I can't wait to spend forever proving it." The officiant barely got through the final pronouncements before Ethan was kissing her, and the small gathering erupted in applause. Hazel jumped up and down, shouting, "They're married! They're married!" while Poppy clapped her hands, not fully understanding but caught up in the excitement. The reception was in the same backyard with a simple dinner and the promised cake. Hazel made a speech that was mostly about how she'd known all along that this would happen and how she was glad to finally have a sister officially. Poppy managed to get frosting everywhere, including somehow in her hair, and Lena danced with her new husband under the string lights Ethan had hung, feeling more complete than she'd ever thought possible. Late in the evening, when most of the guests had left and both girls had crashed hard from sugar and excitement, Lena found herself standing at the edge of the yard with Ethan's arms around her from behind. "Happy?" he murmured against her neck. "Overwhelmingly." Lena leaned back into him. "Thank you for all of this, for believing in us. Thank you for taking a chance on a widower with a precocious 5-year-old and more baggage than any reasonable person should have to deal with. Your baggage matched mine pretty well." Lena turned in his arms. "We're quite a pair." "The best pair." Ethan kissed her softly. "Ready to start our forever?" "I've been ready since that first morning when you fed my daughter a muffin without being asked." Lena smiled up at him. "I think I knew even then that I was going to marry you, that you were going to save me." Lena's voice went quiet. "From grief, from loneliness, from spending the rest of my life just surviving. You gave me permission to live again." "We saved each other," Ethan corrected. "That's what love does." They stood there for a long time, wrapped in each other, while the spring night settled around them. Inside the house, Patricia was putting the girls to bed, their voices a distant murmur of bedtime stories and goodnight kisses. This was their family now, blended and complicated and built from broken pieces, but whole in all the ways that mattered. The weeks after the wedding settled into a new normal. Lena officially moved into Ethan's house, bringing her boxes of possessions and her memories and Poppy's entire collection of stuffed animals. They converted the guest room into Poppy's bedroom, painting it a soft yellow and filling it with everything a toddler could want. Hazel helped pick out the decorations, insisting on a shared bookshelf where both girls could keep their favorites. "Because sisters share," Hazel declared with authority. Summer arrived with warm nights and fireflies, and they spent their evenings in the backyard while the girls chased lightning bugs in jars. Ethan taught both girls how to plant a garden, showing them how to press seeds into the soil and water them gently. Poppy was more interested in playing in the dirt than actual gardening, but she tried, her little face scrunched with concentration. "Just like her mama," Ethan teased, watching Lena attempt to stake tomato plants with dubious success. "I'm trying," Lena protested. "I'm a city girl. We don't do gardens." "You're doing great." Ethan kissed her temple. "Everything you do is great." One evening in July, as they sat on the porch swing watching the girls play, Hazel came running over with something clutched in her hands. Lena, look what Poppy found!" She opened her palms to reveal a small nest that had fallen from one of the trees, empty but perfectly formed. "That's special," Lena said, examining it. "Birds work really hard to build their nests." "Why?" Hazel asked. "Because that's where they raise their babies, where they keep them safe and warm and loved. Lena handed the nest back carefully. It's their home. Like our home, Hazel said matter-of-factly. We all live here together, and you and Daddy keep us safe. Exactly like that. Lena felt her throat tighten. Hazel turned to Poppy, who'd wandered over to see what the fuss was about. We're a family, Hazel told her seriously. Lena and Daddy got married, which means you're my real sister now. Forever and ever. Sister, Poppy repeated, wrapping her arms around Hazel's legs. My Hazel. Watching them, Lena felt something settle in her chest. This was what she'd promised Claire. Not that Poppy would never know loss, because loss was unavoidable, but that she would know love. That she would grow up surrounded by people who chose her, who fought for her, who made sure she knew she belonged. That night, after both girls were asleep, Lena pulled out the box of photos one more time. But instead of putting them back in the closet, she brought them to the living room where Ethan was reading. I want to make an album, she said, of Claire. Her life, her story, everything. So when Poppy's old enough to understand, she'll have something tangible, something that shows her who her birth mother was. Ethan set down his book immediately. That's a beautiful idea. Do you want help? Yeah. Lena sat beside him, spreading the photos across the coffee table. I want to do this right. I want Poppy to know that she came from love, that Claire loved her enough to trust me with her, that our family isn't just the one we've built, but also includes the people who came before. They spent the next hour looking through photos, Lena telling stories about her sister while Ethan listened and asked questions. It should have been painful, but instead it felt healing, like she was honoring Claire's memory instead of hiding from it. She would have liked you, Lena said softly, holding a photo of Claire at the beach, laughing at something off camera. Yeah? Ethan studied the photo. Yeah. She always said I needed someone who could keep up with my stubbornness, someone who wouldn't let me push them away when things got hard. Lena smiled. That's you. I'm honored to be that person. Ethan pulled her close. And I promise you, we'll make sure Poppy knows her story. All of it. The hard parts and the beautiful parts. The album took weeks to complete, but when it was finished, it was perfect. Photos of Claire throughout her life, with captions telling her story. The album ended with a photo of Claire holding newborn Poppy in the hospital, both of them bathed in golden light, and the caption read, Your first mother, who loved you with her whole heart and trusted me to carry that love forward. Lena put the album on the shelf in Poppy's room, right where she could reach it when she was older. Someday, when Poppy asked the questions Lena knew were coming, they'd sit down together and go through every page. They'd talk about Claire and Jason, about love and loss, about how families came in all different forms, and that was okay. But for now, Poppy was just 3 years old, more concerned with whether she could have another cookie than with the complexities of her origin story. And that was okay too. The following spring, almost exactly a year after their wedding, Lena stood in the backyard watching Ethan push both girls on the swing set he'd built. Poppy shrieked with delight every time she went high, while Hazel called out instructions about going higher, faster, more. Patricia appeared beside her, 2 glasses of lemonade in hand. They're beautiful together, she observed. They really are. Lena accepted the lemonade gratefully. Sometimes I still can't believe this is my life. Believe it. Patricia clinked her glass against Lena's. You've built something special here, all of you together. I had a lot of help. Lena glanced at her mother-in-law. From you especially. Thank you. For accepting me. For making me part of your family. Oh, honey, you made yourself part of this family the moment you chose to love that stubborn son of mine and his equally stubborn daughter. Patricia's eyes were warm. But you're welcome, and I'm grateful. You gave me back something I thought was lost. A son who smiles, a granddaughter who feels secure, and now another granddaughter to spoil. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the scene unfold. Then Patricia said quietly, Have you thought about telling her? Poppy, I mean, about Claire. All the time. Lena wrapped both hands around her glass. Right now, we talk about Claire like she's a special person who loved her very much. Poppy knows her face from photos. But the full truth, about being her birth mother, about the adoption, all of it, that's still a few years away. What will you tell her? Lena had thought about this countless times, rehearsing different versions in her head. The truth. That her first mama loved her so much that when she knew she was dying, she asked me to raise Poppy as my own. That I promised Claire I would love her baby with everything I had, and that's what I've done. That family isn't always about biology. It's about who shows up, who stays, who chooses to love you even when it's hard. She's lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have her. Lena's voice cracked. She saved me as much as I saved her, maybe more. The sound of running feet interrupted them, and suddenly Poppy was there, grabbing Lena's hand. Mama, come swing with us. Okay, baby girl. Lena set down her lemonade and let herself be pulled toward the swing set where Ethan was already holding a swing steady for her. Your daughter demands your presence, he said with a grin. Our daughter, Lena corrected, settling onto the swing. All our daughters. Ethan's smile softened. Yeah, all our daughters. He pushed her gently, and Lena closed her eyes, feeling the warm spring air on her face and hearing the girls' laughter all around her. This was happiness. This was healing. This was what it meant to build a life from grief and come out the other side whole. That evening, after dinner and baths and the usual chaos of bedtime, Lena found herself in Poppy's room reading the bedtime story while her daughter fought sleep with determined eyes. One more, Mama, Poppy pleaded when the story ended. No, baby, it's sleep time. Not tired. I know. Lena kissed her forehead. But sleep anyway. Tomorrow we're going to the park with Hazel, remember? And Daddy? And Daddy. Lena smoothed Poppy's hair back. We're all going together. Love Daddy, Poppy mumbled, her eyes finally drifting closed. He loves you too, so much. Lena watched her daughter's breathing even out. And I love you more than anything in this world. You know that, right? Poppy was already asleep, but Lena whispered it anyway. Your Mama Claire loved you too. She loved you so much that she gave you to me, so you'd always have someone to take care of you. And I promise you, Poppy, I will always take care of you. I will always make sure you know you're loved, that you belong, that you're exactly where you're supposed to be. She stood quietly, turning off the light but leaving the door cracked open the way Poppy liked. In the hallway, she nearly collided with Hazel, who was supposed to be asleep in her own room. Can't sleep? Lena asked. Hazel shook her head. Too much thinking. What are you thinking about? About how you're my mom now. Not like my first mom, but like my real mom too. Hazel twisted her hands together. Is it okay to have two moms, even if one is in heaven? Lena's heart clenched. She knelt down to Hazel's level. It's absolutely okay. Your heart is big enough to love both your moms, and we both love you right back. Even Mama Emily? Even though she never met you? Even her. Lena pulled Hazel into a hug, because she loved your daddy, and she loved you, and she wanted you to be happy. I think she'd be glad you have someone else to love you now. I think so too. Hazel squeezed tighter. I love you, Lena. I love you too, sweetheart. Lena felt tears sting her eyes. So much. She tucked Hazel back into bed, kissed her goodnight, and finally made it to her own bedroom where Ethan was already under the covers reading. Everything okay? He asked, setting his book aside. Everything's perfect. Lena climbed into bed beside him. Hazel asked if it was okay to love both her moms. What did you tell her? That her heart was big enough for both, that Emily would want her to be happy. Lena rested her head on Ethan's shoulder. Was that the right thing to say? It was exactly the right thing to say. Ethan kissed the top of her head. You're really good at this, you know, being a mom. I'm figuring it out as I go. We all are. Ethan was quiet for a moment. I was thinking today about where we were a year ago, about how scared we both were. And look at us now. Look at us now, Lena echoed. Married with 2 kids and a garden we have no idea how to maintain, but living the dream. Ethan's voice was full of affection, and I wouldn't change a single thing. Not even the time Poppy decided to paint the living room wall with spaghetti sauce? Okay, maybe that one thing. They both laughed, and Ethan pulled her closer. But everything else is perfect. Lena thought about that word. Perfect. A year ago, she would have said her life was broken beyond repair, that she was just going through the motions, surviving for Poppy's sake, but not really living. But Ethan had shown her that broken things could be made beautiful again. That love didn't erase grief, but it made it bearable. That family wasn't about biology or perfect circumstances, but about who showed up and chose to stay. "I love you," she whispered into the darkness. "I love you too." Ethan's arms tightened around her. "Thank you for taking a chance on us. Thank you for being worth the chance." They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, while down the hall their daughters slept peacefully. Two little girls who'd come into their lives through tragedy and loss, but who'd become the center of everything good and beautiful and worth fighting for. In her room, the photo of Claire still sat on the shelf, watching over the child she'd entrusted to her sister. And if Lena let herself believe in such things, she thought Claire was smiling, proud of the life they'd built, grateful that her daughter was growing up surrounded by love, happy that Lena had found a way to honor her promise while also building her own happiness. The grief would always be there, a quiet ache in the background of beautiful days. But so would the love. The overwhelming, all-consuming, fierce love that had saved them all. And that, Lena thought as sleep finally claimed her, was more than enough. It was everything. Years would pass, and there would be more challenges ahead. Conversations with Poppy about her origins. Questions about why she didn't look like Lena. Moments of grief when Claire's absence felt unbearably sharp. But they would face all of it together, as a family. Ethan would be there to hold her when the memories got too heavy. The girls would grow up as sisters in every way that mattered, and Lena would keep her promise to Claire, making sure Poppy knew she came from love, and was raised in love, and would always, always be loved. It wasn't the life Lena had planned. It wasn't the life Claire had planned either. But it was a good life. A beautiful life. A life built from courage and grief and the radical choice to keep opening your heart even after it's been shattered. And in the end, that was the greatest gift Claire had given her. Not just the responsibility of raising Poppy, but the permission to build something new from the ashes of loss. To prove that love was stronger than grief. That family could be chosen as much as it was given. That broken people could find each other and create something whole. This was their story. Messy and imperfect and absolutely real. And Lena wouldn't have changed it for anything in the world.